Welcome back to Live Impact News here. We are back for the next 3.5 hours hitting the hardest stories. Of course, me and Carlene have been here since yesterday, really, in and out, covering the tragic loss of NASCAR legend Greg Biffle and his family in this plane crash. We have updated scenes now from what the debris looks like today, and we now know, since we last spoke around 11, that the NTSB update will be coming at 3 p.m. on hopefully what happened here, some more information. Now, we know that NTSB, National Transportation Safety Board, investigations are very thorough and long form, so we're likely not going to get all the information that we can get until maybe even a year out from now. But this is going to be their preliminary explanation of what they found thus far. We've been seeing crews like you're seeing here for the last 24 hours now, more than that. This crash happened at 10:15 yesterday morning in Statesville, and those crews have been out there all day, all night, ever since the first responders and then the FAA came, and then of course, the NTSB, which followed. And
They're
again,
just starting to comb. I mean, imagine how much they have to comb through, and so delicately too.
yeah. It is, I mean, a huge task,
Yes.
I'm sure, and so much of it's gone. I mean, you can
Right.
see that image. It's just so stark. This is the image that Carlene and I were looking at yesterday for the first time on air and didn't really have any words.
Right.
So again, 3 p.m. NTSB update. We're going to be bringing it to you live here on WCNC Plus, the whole thing. Of course, we'll have a recap of it afterwards and in our newscast at 4, 5, and 6. But if you want to catch that whole thing live, which I really recommend, I'm very much looking forward to finding out more about what happened here. That will be at 3 p.m. here on WCNC Plus, or around then. That's when it's expected, but usually can be a couple minutes behind for things that are, as chaotic scenes as this can be. Of course, while we await some updates on the actual crash itself, we want to continue to remember the legacy of not just Greg Biffle, also his family. They were known for being incredibly generous people, even after his time as a driver. We talked a lot about his flights to Western North Carolina in Hurricane Helene, delivering supplies to Western North Carolina when they needed it most. I know we all remember how delicate and difficult of a time it was, still is. And he was there in the thick of it, delivering things himself, organizing other flights. Asheville Police Department actually releasing a statement expressing that. They say, "Today we are deeply saddened to learn of the tragic passing of Greg Biffle and his family in a plane crash. Our thoughts and prayers are with their loved ones during this incredibly difficult time. Mr. Biffle and his family were extraordinary, selfless individuals whose generosity made a lasting impact on our community. During Hurricane Helene, Mr. Biffle was recognized by our department for his critical support to emergency response efforts. When first responders urgently needed Starlink units to restore communications, he acted immediately, coordinating the delivery of 8 Starlink units by helicopter to the mission helipad within 6 hours, restoring vital communications. He later provided 3 additional units to support ongoing recovery operations." So we've been talking about these missions, but to actually remind us of how quickly, within 6 hours, to get all of those really big pieces of equipment by
Vital.
helicopter.
I mean,
yeah.
Especially first responders depend on this communication in the first hours of a crisis.
Especially in those mountain communities
Yep.
where people might be stuck, as we know.
Very rural.
Yeah, I was stationed out there in Boone, not towards Asheville, but similar scenes of people live in places where one road or bridge might be the thing that connects. And if
If it goes out, you're
and then the internet
it.
goes out too.
yeah.
How can you get a hold of anybody?
Right.
So really just incredible. I know he helped really save that community in this time, and that's really the gratitude that they're expressing in that post. We've also gotten a chance here on Live Impact News to speak with some people who knew him really closely. Mike Massaro, for example, is someone who is not a stranger at all to NASCAR as a sport, covering it for many, many years, including when Greg was a driver. Now he works for RFK Racing, which of course is now the racing group that Biffle was a part of at
Yes.
the time. And so take a listen to this interview where we talk about his legacy and how Massaro hopes that he's remembered. And we want to get back to this breaking news story of the death of Greg Biffle and his family, obviously leaving such a legacy behind him. And we're getting our first insight into how people are reacting, those who knew him, particularly in the NASCAR community. So we are very lucky today to be joined by Mike Massaro, who has been covering this sport for decades, now works for RFK Racing. And I know, Mike, this is a very personal loss for RFK Racing in particular. I just want to check in and offer our condolences first. How are you and the team doing with this news?
Well, thank you, Julie. We appreciate that. Under the circumstances, I guess we're doing pretty well, but it is devastating news. No question about it. Just not only for RFK Racing, but for the entire NASCAR community. If you're on social media, you cannot scroll without seeing a post from somebody who Greg touched. And it's not just in the sport, it's also outside the sport. His humanitarian efforts after Hurricane Helene, touched thousands of people and just really speaks to who Greg really was beyond a race car driver.
You have the unique experience of covering the sport for so long and then now being a part of the team. I know that Greg Biffle drove for Roush. I would be really curious to know any interactions that stick out to you, whether when he was driving or after the fact in his humanitarian work, any interactions that are sticking with you today that you had with him.
Well, they were always the same. I mean, Greg was super consistent. He was a driver who, from day one, as a young driver in the Truck Series, going back to 1998, to just recently when he was in his post-career, when he was just driving in fun events with some thrill shows and things of that nature. He was always the same, very consistent. Ultra competitive, but he never let that take over his personality. He was always fun, always enjoyed what he was doing. You could tell that. He just was so enthusiastic about the sport. He just loved life. He loved being with people. He loved people in the community. He loved anything that involved motorsports of any kind. And he liked helping people, as I alluded to with his humanitarian efforts. I mean, he was always the same. There are so many drivers, Julie, who come into the sport as a young driver and are affected by the outside sources, whether it's the fame, whether it's the money, and they change. Greg never did. He remained grounded, and he will always be appreciated for that, I'm sure.
And Mike, I'm really glad you brought up Hurricane Helene. That was such a huge tragedy here in North Carolina, and Greg stepped up immediately. I remember we did stories with him going and delivering resources to those who needed it. I think that really speaks to, I know he's not from North Carolina, but how he made North Carolina and the community here his home.
Yeah, you're right. He's from Vancouver, Washington, but he lived in the Charlotte community for so long that it became a home for him, and he certainly had a connection to all the people here. So it certainly appeared that it touched his heart, what the folks in Western North Carolina were going through after the hurricane, and he put together what I consider, a kind of a humanitarian air force, if you will. Not only did he make runs with his own helicopter up to the mountains to deliver supplies and things like that, but he also recruited other people who had their own private aircrafts who could also participate, and it just kind of snowballed from there. From what I recall, supplies were just pouring in. There were warehouses full of supplies that he was delivering up there, along with the collaboration. If it hadn't been for him, the suffering would have continued much longer. And I know there are a lot of people that are completely indebted to him and the folks surrounding his efforts during the hurricane relief efforts.
It's been so bittersweet to hear about all the people speaking out who were personally impacted by his generosity during that time. Now, I've also got Carlene here, who's a big NASCAR fan herself.
I am. My family has been a big fan for years and years, and I wanted to ask, I know Greg was just named one of, a couple years ago, 75 greatest drivers in the sport. And anything he got behind the wheel of, any car he drove, any truck he drove, anything he touched, he drove the heck out of it. So can you explain, what was the X factor behind his success? What's made him stand out from the field?
If I could pinpoint that and package it, I'm sure there's a lot of drivers who would like to know that secret too. It was such natural talent and his dedication to his craft. He would concentrate on, being in the simulator as a race car driver and doing so much work there, a lot of homework. But as you mentioned, Carlene, he could drive anything. He loved his dune buggy, right? So he liked going out and doing that kind of thing. Just this summer, he was involved in an exhibition race with one of our drivers, Ryan Preece, up in Connecticut at the Stafford Speedway with the Cletus McFarland Thrill Show, the New England 900. It was kind of more of an exhibition more than anything else, but you could tell it matched his personality because it was all about having fun. He finished second in that race, and afterwards got on the microphone and entertained all the fans at the racetrack. So that's the kind of person he was. That's the kind of driver he was, just so passionate about driving anything, as you say. You can go back to 1998 when he got in a truck and for Jack Roush at the time, and he dominated early in his career, winning the Truck Series championship in 2000. He followed that up by being promoted to what was then the Busch Series, now the Xfinity Series. He won the championship there in 2002, and of course continued to climb the ladder, went to the Cup Series, where he came close to winning a championship, but never did. Had he done that, he would have been the only driver to win championships in all three series, and I think he'll be remembered for that for sure, and that's certainly one of the reasons why he's a Hall of Fame candidate, and I fully expect he'll be in the Hall of Fame one day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know in the last couple of days and in the coming days, a lot of people who aren't familiar with Greg Biffle or NASCAR are going to be learning a lot about his legacy. I'm curious, for those people that are just getting an introduction, what do you want people to remember about Greg Biffle?
I want them to remember how good a person he was. Now, he's obviously a championship race car driver, and I don't think anybody will forget that. But I want them to know that Greg was as authentic a human being as you will ever come across. You know, someone who cared about other human beings, cared about having fun, cared about enjoying life, and just was a good person. You know, he's just a good person who cared not only about, you know, people in the sport, but outside it as well.
I know that this is a really, really hard time, and so we do so appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. Before I let you go, I'm just curious, what's next for RFK Racing in terms of honoring the legacy of such a phenomenal driver and man? Where do you guys go from here?
Yeah, you know, so it's a fluid situation, obviously. We're gathering constantly to talk about what our next steps are, but I can tell you right now, I'm standing in our museum where you can see behind me, there are some of Greg's trophies, fire suit, that's in our museum in Concord. Folks are more than welcome to come here and pay their respects. But as for what's next, we're still in the planning process, and I'm sure there'll be other things to announce shortly.
Definitely. Well, Mike, thank you so much for joining us. And again, our condolences. I'm sure that people really appreciate you taking the time because this is such a heartbreaking situation, but being able to hear from people who knew him is always the best. So thank you so much.
My pleasure, Julie. Thank you.
Yeah, really great to get that insight, of course. Really thankful for him taking the time to talk to us as he processes this as well. We're going to take a quick break, but we will be back with more in 2 minutes.
Yeah, certainly the sky conditions have improved.
Welcome back to Live Impact News, 1246 here in the Live Impact studio. We also know that people have weekend plans. It is Friday, and so we want to get to a check
Do you
of your
have
forecast.
plans?
Do I have plans? Yeah, working here tomorrow morning. Catch me tomorrow morning and Monday morning. I'm switching my schedule. Do you have plans?
I have a weenie meetup this weekend.
Not a weenie meetup.
Yes.
Oh.
Thankfully for what Chris said this morning.
It's looking
gonna
good.
Be, it'll be good
Prime
for the
weenie
weenie
weather.
dogs. Prime weenie weather. Love it.
Sweet Turkey is going to have a lovely time.
Fantastic time.
Well, this is a look from our Larry Sprinkle on what you can expect this weekend and this week, of course, holiday plans, travel plans as well for all those who are traveling for the Christmas holiday.
Yeah, certainly the sky conditions have improved considerably. If you're out and about this morning, anytime between about, say, 4 a.m., 8 a.m., we have the clouds and the rain. Right now, not a cloud in the sky. Monroe looking great. Our Lake Norman camera focused on the lake right up there in Dallas to Tower Cam. And uptown looking fantastic here. If you're heading out on a Friday, it is a breezy day. Sustained winds now at 38 miles per hour at Jefferson, 28 at Boone, anywhere about 10 to 15 miles per hour in the Charlotte area. Overall, we're seeing some breezy conditions out there. Enough that well, those inflatables could be tossed around a bit. In fact, they could be in your neighbor's yard. We're going to see sustained winds today anywhere from about 15 to maybe up to 25 to 30 miles an hour. So something to take into consideration. If you're out and about this evening, here's the way it looks as far as your temperatures. Around 6 p.m. we're at 50 degrees, dropping off into the mid-40s by 8 o'clock tonight. And for the midnight hour, if you're out and about, temperatures around 38 degrees at that time, but it will be clear skies, no precipitation expected after what we saw this morning. So sunny skies in order today. It'll be a breezy afternoon, cool and sunny on your Saturday, Sunday afternoon, milder temperatures near 60. Some spots may make it into the mid-60s on Sunday afternoon. That's the good news. Now, going back to early today, this is our radar at 4:39. We had a band of heavy and strong winds and some very powerful storms that tracked across the area. That was about 4:39 this morning from radar at that time. Then it kind of redeveloped around 5:42. The radar from Asheboro to Albemarle, that storm system tracked east, and we did have a severe thunderstorm warning in effect this morning. Even had a tornado tag to it, so we did have the potential for some strong storms. So that's the good news. Did not develop into anything but some gusty winds and a lot of very heavy rain at that time. Scanning the skies at the moment. No rain here. We had the rain and showers that moved out here this morning, tracked off the Carolina coastline. So for today, sunshine, blue skies, got those winds up there anywhere about 15 to 20 miles an hour. Upper 50s, so we'll say a little bit cooler today with temperatures as we head into the afternoon in the 50s. By around 9 o'clock tonight, we're into the low 40s, right around 43 degrees at that time. Tomorrow morning, we drop to 30 in Charlotte, about 27 at Boone, over at Rockingham, about 32. Where do the lows go as we head to the weekend? You can see Sunday morning about 37. And then our coldest morning of next week is going to be Monday, a low 30. Contrast that with Friday morning, a low temperature of only 52 degrees. That is really spring-like conditions. Here's your Jerry Hunt 7-day forecast. We're right around 59 today. Tomorrow should be A-OK. Started out a little chilly, about 30 in the morning, about 58 degrees about Saturday. And then Sunday afternoon, great weather for the game at the stadium. We're hitting about 64 degrees. Fantastic weather for a victory at Bank of America Stadium. Now, contrast next week, we're down to 30 on Monday morning, rebounding to only 51 degrees. That 51 is going to be the coldest weather we'll see all of next week. We're up to, pretty typical temperatures as we get to Tuesday morning down to 32, about 58. And then here we go as we head into Christmas Eve daytime. You got some last minute shopping. Going to be fantastic weather for that. Kind of balmy, in fact. We'll top out about 68 degrees. Now, I think east and southeast here, we're going to see some neighborhoods making it into the low 70s on Christmas Eve daytime. And for Christmas Day itself, if you're heading to Grandma's house, it's going to be pretty close to perfect. If you like those milder temperatures, hey, the skates are going to be out as you head into the daytime hours on Thursday. Thursday, Christmas Day, look for high temperature around 67 degrees. So almost spring-like as we get into Christmas week. And that's your forecast.
Big game for the Panthers coming
That's
up,
right.
Carlene. At least it's going to have nice weather no matter
Have
what.
nice weather, and then just a few days later, it'll be Christmas morning, and we'll be in t-shirts.
I'm
Almost
wondering
70
about
degrees.
Santa. I'm a little worried about him in that big coat.
It's gonna get hot.
It's going to get hot. I mean,
gonna
he's
get
got to
hot.
travel. We talked about it earlier. He starts in Australia. It is meteorological
That's the word.
summer there
Yeah.
right now, and so I'm sure he's used to it.
He's warm. He
He
goes
gets
to hot
toasty.
places.
He's ready for
probably
it.
ready for it.
Okay. It's that Santa magic. It really is.
And we can watch Santa.
We can.
We can.
Tune in on Christmas Eve because we're going to have the NORAD Santa Tracker here.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! This is a lovely graphic that Carlene made. Shout out, Carlene.
Thank you.
We have had a couple Christmas parades already. Gosh, I cannot speak
It's
today.
okay.
Carlene.
It's been a long couple days.
We've been talking a lot.
We've been talking a lot.
But we had the Belmont Christmas Parade and the Concord Parade last night. Tonight, Fort Mill.
Fort Mill.
Of course, we'll be back here with your headlines at 6:30, Brad's Weather Show, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. We're going to have our night version of WCMC Plus Live Impact News. And then after that is when you can find all sorts of other content, including Panthers previews and the Fort Mill Christmas Parade, all weekdays until Christmas Day itself. So
Yeah.
Either a parade or NORAD Santa Tracker, either
Love
one.
the Santa tracker.
What more could you want? So
It's just fun.
be sure to tune in because we could all use some holiday spirit right now, I think.
For real.
Lots going on in the world. We are going to take a quick break. We'll be back in 2 minutes, though, with some more of your national and local headlines. Welcome back to Live Impact News. We want to get out to something happening right now. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is answering reporter questions. Now, this is notable, of course, because President Donald Trump is not only coming here to North Carolina today in Rocky Mount to support Michael Whatley in his campaign for U.S. Senate for the state of North Carolina, but also he has been teasing the potential of a war with Venezuela. And so Marco Rubio, I'm sure, will be answering those questions as well.
Very closely. I talk to them 4 or 5 times a day, or meet with them, or they're in the White House, or they're here, primarily in the White House, or they're involved in the same meetings we're involved in. I mean, that's just not factual. No one is out there doing independent action. All of it is strongly coordinated. It's one of the benefits of also being the National Security Advisor is it allows us to also organize the interagency. Every single one of these envoys, I speak about Steve Woodcock in particular, who's a phenomenal person, very smart, very talented, who dedicates, he doesn't get paid to do this job, he does it for free. And he invests a tremendous amount of time, full time on this thing, traveling all over the world, doing all kinds of things. Okay, but Steve doesn't do anything independently. He relies on the interagency. He gets support from Treasury, sometimes from Commerce, certainly from the Department of War, and from the State Department. In fact, he's staffed in many of these visits by State Department folks, and including the ones in Miami. Especially as we get to the technical parts of these agreements. So the synergy there is very tight across the board. And so I think that is not factual.
I was referring to Envoy Grinnell with Venezuela and some of those conflicts earlier this year that really kind of weren't helpful in getting towards the release of the prisoners.
Look, everything that's been done in this administration has been coordinated in some form or fashion. I mean, you guys don't see it all because look, I know everybody wants foreign policy to be 100% transparent, but sometimes it really can't be because there are sensitivities, because there are diplomatic sensitivities, because things people are willing to agree to in private, they may not be willing to do so in public. There's all kinds of things that have to happen in order to achieve outcomes. Sometimes they work, sometimes certain approaches work, sometimes they don't. But that's not new to this administration. That's been true throughout history. And but at the end of the day, I mean, I feel like we have a very good team of people that work very closely together on all of this. And the key is every single one of these conflicts, every single one of these issues are all multidisciplinary. Okay? There is no such thing as any one of these things that we're dealing with. Again, going back to the case, let's just use Ukraine as an example. In the case of Ukraine, it involved Treasury. With regards to the minerals deal. It involves commerce to some extent. It most certainly involves the Department of War in terms of not just battlefield assessments, but the sale of weaponry through Pearl, etc. It involves the Department of State in terms of everything from interpreters to the technical work of actually putting words to paper that would make sense in an agreement and supporting these visits. We had a very important meeting in Geneva, hosted at our embassy, supported by diplomatic personnel that were involved in doing that, and a lot of the follow-up as well that has to happen with some of these things. You know, peace deals aren't just, in the case of Gaza, strongly supported. We took our ambassador in Yemen, who can't be in Yemen, Fagan, and assigned him for 8 weeks on that portfolio so that we could have someone there to help navigate and coordinate all the technical aspects. You can reach a peace agreement in concept, but then someone's got to sit down and write down the technical language and the specificity, and they rely on the professionals in this department and other government agencies, depending on the subject matter. So, look, I think in any new administration, there's a learning curve early on. People are still getting onboarded. You may not even have people Senate confirmed yet in these positions. Maybe you haven't even hired some unfilled spots. But I think certainly in the second half of last year, I'm very proud and very pleased at the synergy that we've established on all of these things and that continue to establish it. Another one that's doing a great job is Mossad Boulos. I mean, he's out there every day working with our Africa Bureau. They're very involved in this, on trying to deal with Sudan, on trying to deal with the Rwanda DRC. So we have a good team of people that work very well together and very collaboratively, and we're going to build on that in the new year. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. Shelby Talcott with Semaphore. Vanity Fair quoted you as wondering whether Putin just wants the entirety of Ukraine. I'm curious if that's still a question for you, and how confident are you in being able to reach a peace agreement if that is a question? And then along those lines, is there a deadline for Russia and Ukraine to come to an agreement before this administration walks away?
Yeah, I'm not in any position to give you deadlines on anything. And as far as that quote, that's a quote the president has said publicly, which is, he has said 3 things. I thought it was going to be the easiest one, and it's turned out to be the hardest. I don't know if Putin wants to do a deal or if Putin wants to take the whole country. These are things he has said openly. And, you know, I think that's, I don't even remember when I talked to the guy from that magazine, but, you know, for much of the early part of this year, one of the things we were trying to deduce is exactly what is it that Russia wants to achieve. We know what they wanted to achieve initially when the war began. They haven't achieved those objectives. There's a new set of objectives now. I mean, part of reaching an agreement is trying to understand, I've already said this, what both sides want or need and what they're willing to give. And so I think that was a question that many in the administration had early on, is defining what the Russian position, what exactly do they really, not what they say they publicly want, but what they publicly want and privately want are the same thing. That's part of the, and the same is true on the Ukrainian side, by the way. What could they actually live with, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what are their red lines? That's how you put a deal together. You have to sort of figure out if the two sides overlap at some point. Sometimes some deals are just not ready. Sometimes the timing is perfect, you have to put it together. If you look at what happened with Gaza, that looked intractable. And then a series of events occurred that made it possible. For example, the strike inside of Qatar that the Israelis took at the time, you know, was a sort of a dramatic thing, but in some ways it sort of set in motion a sense of urgency to bring this thing to an end before it spread. So sometimes you just have to be ready for a change in circumstances or conditions that allow progress to be made. But these things are hard to do. They take a lot of time. Sometimes it takes some patience. It's just unfortunate that you know that every day that goes by, more people are died and more people die and more things are destroyed. Yes, sir.
To come back to your comments earlier on Sudan, you mentioned this concern about transshipment and weapons coming from overseas to Sudan. Could you sort of put a slightly finer point on it? Have you raised this with the UAE in your meetings that they need to stop providing support to the RSF? And have you got any commitment or any kind
Yeah,
of
look, none of
response
these,
to that?
neither side has their own factories for the most part, right? All these weapons are acquired from abroad. They have to come from somewhere else, and they have to come through somewhere else. So someone is allowing it to be shipped in, and someone is actually shipping it. So we've had the right and appropriate conversations with all sides of this conflict, because that is their leverage. Without their support, neither side can continue. So that's why we need to engage, and that's why we've engaged the parties involved in all of this. I don't want to find myself here in a position of picking on anybody other than to say that we think and we're hopeful that we can make some progress on this, but we know that in order to make progress on this, it will require outside actors to use their leverage and their pressure to make that come about, particularly this humanitarian truce, which is the first thing we want to achieve. We think that outside actors have the leverage and the influence over the players on the ground to bring about this humanitarian truce. And we are very focused on it. I had a conversation on it yesterday. We have spoken to the UAE, we've spoken to Saudi, we've spoken to Egypt, and this is not new. We've been talking to them. We signed a document with them in September at the UN gatherings. We had previous meetings with them before that. So this is not a new engagement. It's just one that's had a higher sense of urgency given recent events there. But yeah, we're involved every single day trying to work through this, because we do understand and this is not new to this conflict. It is in many ways similar to what happened to happen in Gaza. What brought Hamas to the table, among other things, was the fact that some of the countries that had relationships with Hamas, like Qatar, like Turkey, played a very constructive role in bringing them to the table and pressuring them to sign an agreement. And we played a similar role on the other side. So, you know, it's not unusual that you would involve outside actors in using leverage to bring parties to the table to agree on something. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. On Venezuela, what is the U.S. willing to commit if Maduro is ousted from power to ensure that the country doesn't plunge further into instability in sort of a
Yeah, I
power
don't have any
vacuum?
announcements on that right
And
now.
do you see Maria Corina Machado and Edmundo Gonzalez as the heir apparents for power?
Well, we don't believe Maduro's not legit. We've been pretty clear. We didn't recognize him as a legitimate president. The previous administration didn't as well. The first Trump administration didn't either. He's not the legitimately elected president. They had an election last year that was stolen, and everyone knows it. Even all the countries in the region know it. And but you know, I don't really have anything to add other than what I've said today with regards to Venezuela.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for doing this. According to a poll by the Reagan Institute, 62% of all Americans support the use of military force against suspected drug traffickers in the Caribbean. And among MAGA Republicans, 90% support the military use against suspected drug traffickers in the Caribbean. So how does the State Department view or analyze these figures?
Yeah, I mean, we don't do foreign policy by poll, and our job is to carry out the directives of the president. The president was elected. Donald J. Trump was elected the President of the United States, and he promised that if elected, he would go after drug cartels, and that's what he's doing. He is keeping a promise he made to the American people upon which they elected him to be president. He told them he would protect this country, and that's what he's doing, and he told them he would go after drug cartels, and that's what he's doing. So it doesn't surprise me if that poll is accurate, because the president's simply living up to the promises that he made when he ran for office. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Secretary, on Gaza, you've said repeatedly in this room now that this is pieces of process, that phase 2 could take next 2 to 3 years. Is there a possibility
To fully implement.
To fully
You
implement.
can't build buildings in one day. Right?
Is there a possibility in your mind that the status quo, more or less as we see it now, with this sort of insufficient flow of aid, periodic violations of the ceasefire by each side, a lack of reconstruction, and of course the absence of an international security force, that this could potentially continue more or less through the rest of the president's term? And if not, I'm not asking for a date, but I think we'd all like to know. We've heard from the president and yourself that there are all these countries that want to join the international security force. When will they deploy? Are we talking in the next year, in the next couple of years? And is there a certain amount of time that could pass, at which point the administration, without an ISF, at which point the administration would green light or will green light Israel to resume its war?
The way to answer that question is this way. No one is arguing that the status quo is sustainable in the long term, nor desirable. And that's why we have a sense of urgency about bringing phase one to its full completion, which is the establishment of the Board of Peace and the Palestinian Technocratic Authority or organization that's going to be on the ground. And then the stabilization force comes closely thereafter. Once we've established that, we have a lot of confidence that we are going to have the donors for the reconstruction effort and for all the humanitarian support in the long-term building in phases 2 and phases 3. We just don't think that we're going to get to phase 2 or phase 3. We don't believe that we can have a successful donor conference, just as a real example, until people know they want to know who's in charge, and they want to know that there's security. Okay, they want to make sure that who's going to pledge billions of dollars to build things that are going to get blown up again because a war starts. So they want to know who's in charge, and they want to know that there's security. And that there'll be long-term stability. So no one would argue that what we have in place now is sustainable in the long term. We have to get to the completion of phase 1. I am confident we will, within the time frame necessary to make it successful. It's just not today, but hopefully very, very soon. We've made real progress. We made progress as late as yesterday in additional names for this Palestinian organization that's going to be the technocratic organization. So I think we're very close. I think we're going to get there. I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to get through phase 1. And then what I meant about taking years for phase 2 or phase 3 is not years to start it. I'm just being, to rebuild a place, to put buildings and rebuild an economy, it takes time. You have the donors, but you still have to have the equipment, you got to build, you have to do all that sort of thing. This is a long-term project. Phase 1 is not a long-term project. It has to happen. I'm confident it'll happen within a time frame that makes it successful. We're very committed to it, and so is everybody else. Everybody else in the region understands that there is no plan B. If this doesn't work, Plan B or what's going to happen is a new war, and no one wants that. No one wants that.
So, Mr. Secretary, are you going to be able to tell us in the next year who is going to secure Gaza and
it'll have to happen.
who is going to
talking about
disarm?
the stabilization force?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that'll have to happen much more than a year from now. That is the completion of phase 1 when we get through the establishment of the stabilization force, Board of Peace, Palestinian group, stabilization force. All those things happen, boom, 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 1, 2, 3. They have to happen very quickly, not a year from now. This is something we're aiming at very soon. It has to. It's what we're focused on right now, like a laser. All right, yes, sir.
Secretary, thanks for all the time, and
it's not going to be 4 hours, I promise.
We're good.
It's an hour and a half.
You see the press corps is hungry for engagement here. I hope the State Department will return to regular press briefings soon. You got a great spokesperson's unit over there that's more than capable of handling it. A couple quick questions. The President directed you through executive order to explore sanctions of sectors and chapters of the Muslim Brotherhood. Qatar is ground zero for the Muslim Brotherhood. This administration obviously has a very close relationship with the Qataris. How do you confront the Muslim Brotherhood without confronting the Qataris? That's my first question. Second question is on UNRWA. There's a report that the State Department is in deep discussions about possibly sanctioning UNRWA. What's your mindset on that, and do you feel there is any role for UNRWA absent humanitarian aid delivery in the future?
I think we can deliver humanitarian aid without UNRWA. I think UNRWA is a corrupted organization that's unsalvageable, period. And I think our policies reflect that. On the first point that you talked about, I think we'll have some announcements, and not today, early next week, on Muslim Brotherhood. Designating groups there's a series of internal steps, despite what people may or may not perceive. There are things we have to meet, criteria we have to meet, information we have to have, boxes we have to check, legal reviews that have to happen, and that takes time. So, but I think there'll be announcements very soon on that. Probably as early, if not today, early this next week.
Do you expect pushback from the Qataris?
Well, I'm not going to comment on which segments of the Muslim Brotherhood. As you know, there are different chapters, for lack of a better term, and individuals spread throughout the world. But the President's issued his executive order, and we're working through the execution of it. And we'll get to what we need to get to. A lot of this obviously depends, from a legal review standpoint. You have to have certain information that you can cite in order to justify the designation. So we're working through that. We'll have some announcements next week, and they won't be the last announcements that we have.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Secretary, thank you for doing this today. This conversation between my colleagues and yourself paints a seemingly chaotic and hostile world at times. So very simply and generally put, what do you believe is the biggest threat facing the United States today?
I don't know we live in a world where we have a single threat that we can identify. I think there are multiple things that you look, both short-term and long-term. As I pointed to in the hemisphere, in our own hemisphere, closest to home geographically, it's the rise and the power of transnational criminal terrorist group who are destabilizing nation states throughout the region and pose a direct threat to the United States through overthrowing governments, destabilizing these governments, leading to mass migration, and certainly the trafficking of drugs, and also providing fertile ground for potential, outside of hemisphere actors to act within our hemisphere in the long term. That's a major threat. I think we face some challenges. And then we know the United States industrial base, the United States supply chains become dangerously dependent on other countries for many of the things that are elemental and critical to our, not just sustaining what we have, but building the economy of the 21st century. And so building up our industrial base and diversifying our supply chains are a critical threat that the United States needs to confront. I think related to that, not directly related to the Department of State, but somewhat related to the United States, is building of our defense industrial base as well. One of the challenges that we face, and so does much of the world, certainly in the West, is the ability to build weaponry at a scale and scope necessary, not just to deal with the threats of today, but to innovate and develop those tomorrow. It simply just takes too long to build up defense articles, get them to market in a timely fashion. And not only do we complain about that, but we have allies who want to buy things from us that we just haven't been able to produce fast enough. And so the President's made that a priority to confront. I think beyond that, I think you would argue that in the big picture, long term, we have to understand that the United States has interests in every part of the world that are related to these two threats. In the case of Africa, we see countries that have extraordinary opportunity to develop economically, the youngest population in the world, and the United States wants to have relationships, both commercial and personal, with many of these nations as they emerge in their own right into an era of prosperity. We want to be there to help assist in that if possible. We want to make sure that American interests are taken into account. Unfortunately, there are many countries around the world that in the past have had to rely on predatory practices of other countries to receive stability, to receive funds necessary to build infrastructure or what have you. We want to make sure that American businesses are at the table offering alternatives, be it in telecommunication, be it in artificial intelligence and technology, be it in basic infrastructure. So there's a lot of things to uncover and unpack, and I think in the long term as well. And I think our national security strategy reflects a lot of this. So I wish we lived in a world where we had one major threat. Many of these are interrelated. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
All right, you were just listening in to Secretary of State Marco Rubio answering questions live from reporters about all sorts of things. But this is particularly timely as President Donald Trump publicly weighs the potential for a war with Venezuela, saying it's not fully ruled out. So we are actually awaiting President Trump's visit to North Carolina. I know he's still in D.C. right now, expected to make an announcement on drug prices. But later today, this evening, I believe around 6 p.m., he's supposed to be in Rocky Mount with Senate candidate Michael Whatley to encourage people to vote for him, to offer his support, and also speak on the economy. So that's one of many, many stories that we are following today. We'll be right back. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to Live Impact News. I don't have any updates for you right now on the Greg Biffle plane crash, but I do want to just summarize what we know so far, and as we await an update from the NTSB at 3 p.m. So here is the latest that we've seen from the crash site itself. This is obviously a heartbreaking scene to see what's left of this plane after yesterday's crash. It's now been more than 24 hours since we got the first word that this has happened, without many details. The plane crash happened around 10:15 yesterday morning. This is at the Statesville Regional Airport, and we know 7 people were killed, including Greg Biffle, NASCAR legend, his wife Christina, 2 kids, also Craig Wadsworth, another NASCAR name, and Dennis Dutton and his son Jack, another certified pilot as well. We do not know at this point who was flying the plane. Of course, Biffle was known for his experience, not just as a pilot, but donating his time and experience to helping with relief efforts for Hurricane Helene, for most recently in Jamaica. We do not know that he was flying the plane. As I said, both Dennis and Jack were certified pilots for different types of aircrafts. We're hoping that that's something we learn today at 3 p.m. when we get that updated press
But
conference
heads
from...
up, there's a chance we might not know for months, really.
We really might not know. I'm glad you brought that up because these tend to take over a year for the full investigation.
Right.
So this is a preliminary press conference today at 3. This is the first we're going to hear in terms of a formal interview or press conference from the NTSB. We knew last night that they'd be holding a press conference, but this is the first time we're actually getting a chance to do interviews because they were not doing them last night, understandably so, as they just had arrived on scene. So we're going to go ahead and stick with this as long as we can. We've got our Jessie Pierre has been out there getting reaction. She, I believe, spoke with the Statesville mayor.
She's about to, actually.
She's about
like
to.
right now, and then we're going to have her on in about 40 minutes, yeah.
Have her on around 2 p.m. So she'll be able to recap that interview for us. And then our Bria Smith is at the scene of that press conference. So she'll have updates from that, both of them at 4, 5, and 6. And then I know our Miles Harris, who does both news reporting and also sports sometimes. He's anchoring today, but he will be also putting together a piece on reaction from the community, the NASCAR community. So we've got a lot of reporters doing different things today, working this from every angle, both getting answers and remembering the legacy of Biffle and this family and those others that we know now were lost. While we await some more information, we're going to take you back out to this press conference that's happening live with Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
We've had recent elections here in the Western Hemisphere, and we've met with multiple people that are running. Meeting with them does not mean we're endorsing them for president of Bolivia or president of Chile, but we do want to know who these people are and what they're about and what they're thinking because it informs our work. And by the way, so, you know, we do that from the embassy as well. I mean, we get a lot of the cables I have is a meeting they met with someone who's going to run for president in 2 years. That doesn't mean we're endorsing the person, but we should probably know a little bit about them in case they win. And even if they don't win, if their party has votes in the parliament or votes in their legislative branch, that's an important factor to consider. Yes.
Thank you. Some key European and regional allies say they're limiting intelligence sharing with the United States because they're worried that the boat strikes violate international law and they don't want to be involved. Doesn't that strain these relations with key partners that you say you need in order to do these broader security efforts in the region?
No. No, it doesn't. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm not going to comment on intelligence matters. Look, every day I read stuff that's just not true. Every day. I'm not telling you guys are being, but you guys are being lied to sometimes. Like, sources will come to you and tell you things. Just because they have a government email doesn't mean that they know what they're saying. Maybe they just want to sound important. Maybe they have other incentives. I'm not opining about your question in particular. I'm just writ large, but I'm not going to talk about intelligence matters. Suffice it to say that the United States, every boat strike we've conducted, okay? This is not people seeing a boat and say, okay, let the drummer get wicked and blow them up. We're not talking about that stuff. We are presenting every single one of these is justified. We know who's on those boats. We've been tracking them from the very beginning. We know everything about them. Okay, there are boat strikes we don't take because they don't meet the criteria, the legal criteria. We have everything we need, and it's one of the reasons why you've seen this massive deployment in the region, is to be able to gather intelligence and paint a picture that we can justify to lawyers based on the law. So I'm very confident about that effort. It's been very successful.
Thank you, sir. Back to terrorist designations. Last month, the State Department designated 4 European groups aligned with Antifa as foreign terrorist organizations. Could we see more designations like that in the works for left-wing extremist groups, and what could the scope
Yeah, I mean, if the group's involved in firebombing, if there's anybody involved in, activities such as that could potentially inspire or lead to violence in the United States, we're going to designate them. So sure, if you have any you want to suggest, I will look at them. Okay, you go. I told you we'd get to you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your patience. Mr. Secretary, I wanted to drill down on the way you and the administration see America's national interests, because you said that Ukraine is not on our continent, not our war. You said something in our own hemisphere is more important. So this involves both our commitment to the negotiations in Ukraine, which the President is passionately committed to, for ending the rising numbers of deaths, he says. Russian President Putin told my colleague here, Simmons, today at the news conference in Moscow, "We do not consider ourselves responsible for the loss of life because it was not us who started this war." Does the administration, does the President, you, the administration, believe that Putin was not the aggressor here? And if so, how can you reach an agreement between two parties when the aggressor will not acknowledge that he invaded a sovereign country? Let me, if I just may follow. So how do you reach any kind of compromise or ceasefire when Vladimir Putin repeatedly says, and you say that may not be what he really believes, but he has never said that he would make concessions publicly, and he's never said that he invaded Ukraine. He's always said that that is Russian territory. So why is that not in our national interest when also in our hemisphere, if it's impossible to eliminate the threat of narco-terrorism as you describe it, with Maduro in charge? You've described the extent beyond narco-terrorism and drug trafficking of his threat. You've described it today as a threat to the region. Doesn't that mean there will have to be regime change? And is it in America's national interest to get involved in regime change in our hemisphere, given what's happened before? And why is Maduro this overriding, I mean, he is an overriding threat by all acknowledgement, but why is the former president of Honduras not a regional threat, who was personally involved in, hundreds of tons?
So let me take the second one for the first one. On the president of Honduras, I'm not involved in the pardon process, which is what that was. He's no longer in office. So that might be.
He was in a U.S. prison.
No, I understand, but I can't comment on our pardons process because that's not an area that I have many jobs, but that ain't one of them. So I'm not hiding from it. I'm just telling you I don't know. I can't give you an informed answer on that because I was just involved in that process. As far as the question of Maduro and his impediment, look, I've just made the observation that it's hard to make a deal with someone. Everybody says we should go to negotiation. All I'm observing, I'm just saying all I'm observing is he's never kept any of the deals he's made in the past, which makes it difficult to consider making one in the future. Beyond that, I'm not going to speculate about what might or may not happen. Ultimately, I can tell you what our goals are and what our interests are, and that's how we define them.
Well, in 2019, didn't he get bailed out by Cuban military, Cuban intelligence, outside forces? And so ultimately, with this blockade, is this partly, yes, Maduro, but partly to get at Cuba and Iran and recipients of this sanctioned oil?
This action on the boats, these are sanctioned, but these are enforcement actions. That's what they are. They are existing sanctions. And therefore, 80% of their oil is shipped through ghost fleets. Okay, so we understand what we're talking about. We are talking about boats that are basically privateers, okay, that are flying under false flags, that turn off the transponders, that spoof their true location. They are hired to evade sanctions. We are simply enforcing sanctions. Every one of these has a court order attached to it. We go to a judge, the judge issues the warrant, we're executing. These are enforcement actions. The fact that they happen to impact a terrorist regime, it's a good thing, but they are enforcement actions, and we are conducting enforcement actions. On the case of Ukraine, no one has said that Ukraine is a zero in terms of our national interests. We have sold them billions of dollars worth of weaponry. We've provided them in previous billions of dollars worth of weaponry. We continue to provide them intelligence support. And we have sanctioned. The president has sanctioned the Russian Federation. He issued oil sanctions. All the oil sanctions everybody wanted him to do, he did them. He did them a month and a half ago. All I'm saying, now you point to all this stuff about, does Putin say this? That's why this issue set is difficult. I'm not claiming anything other than the fact that we understand it's difficult. We understand that you're not going to have a deal unless both sides have to give and both sides have to get. Both sides will have to make concessions if you're going to have a deal. You may not have a deal. We may not have a deal. It's unfortunate.
The U.S. should walk away from that if it
Well,
is
that's
not a prime region interest, because it's not in our continent.
That's not my decision to make. Ultimately, the president will make a determination if and when he feels like further U.S. engagement is no longer productive or serves the national interest. That's a decision the president have to make. I can't speculate about that. All right, yes.
Mr. Secretary, a question for you on Venezuela and then quickly on Ukraine. You mentioned Maduro was not the only one indicted by the United States in the Southern District. Does that mean it is U.S. policy that not just Maduro, but his top regime lieutenants, cabinet members, that they all must exit?
Yeah, no, I point to the indictment simply as when people say, well, how do we are alleging that he is, and I guess, you know, you can describe it any way you want. I just want to make clear, like, this is not something we came up with.
Right.
We're basing it on a federal indictment and a superseding indictment.
Cabello's in there.
Yeah, a bunch of people are. And so, but what it proves is, and the reason why I raise the indictments is because the indictments are the point of the $50 million reward. And I believe the $25 or $10 million reward for Cabello and for others. My point is that this allegation, this claim that the Maduro regime is a narco-terrorist organization is not on the basis of political talk or speculation. It is on the basis of evidence provided to a grand jury in the Southern District of New York that returned an indictment. And that's why I point to those indictments.
Can I ask you on Ukraine quickly, because Russia has deployed its latest nuclear-capable missile system to Belarus, according to that country's leadership. We've heard from a number of European leaders, the Chancellor of Germany himself, that they think this era of Pax Americana is gone, that they are needing to prepare to be on a war footing because of the threat from Putin. Do you believe, does this administration believe today, that Vladimir Putin will end his march on the eastern...
All right, we are breaking into that press conference to bring you some breaking news out of Arizona. This is Glendale. Luke Air Force Base is now under lockdown because of an active shooter situation. That is from the base itself announcing this. So we're going to hop in live, I believe, to our news partners in Phoenix who are carrying this live.
in around the Arizona area that goes down to the border of Mexico for the training that these pilots have to encapsulate. So whenever something like this is reported and it says Luke Air Force Base, that could be some training facility that has millions of acres, or it could be the Luke Air Force Base in general. So like whenever you hear the first report, you have to wait to the second and third. There's a book out there called The Art of War, written by Sun Tzu, and he says that the first report is always wrong in military installations. You usually have to wait for the second or third report to find out what's really going on. But like I said, they're going to take it serious. If it's something serious, it's going to get reported. They're going to lock everybody down, make sure that everybody's secure and safe, and that the military machine, which starts with training there at Luke, can deliver their fighter pilots at the capacity that we've always expected as a nation who wins.
Yeah, Luke has such a huge, powerful reputation. It is the largest fighter wing in the world. A major training facility, obviously, for the F-35s and the F-16s, working with Italy, Netherlands, Norway, Singapore, Denmark, and Belgium. It really is being on base, a city within a city. I think that's what struck me the most is, how massive it is. It has its own street names in there. There's a movie theater. There's kind of a club on campus. There's the commissary. There's the store. There's even a Goodwill. There's a campground. It is truly impressive that, it really is its own city. Yeah. And I'm wondering, in a situation like this, Atlas, is that because of the size and the magnitude of it, if you could provide insight on this, how do they try to locate, an alleged shooter or, somewhat one of the bad guys, right? By going through certain parts of it? Is there some kind of protocol? I mean, how does this work?
Yeah, and Atlas, before you jump in on that, because I think that's such a great question to know how they go through and make sure they can break down any threats that are there. I do just want to let you know we've heard from somebody on base, and they did get a message saying that it is all clear now. So hopefully this will calm everyone down a little bit, but also to Atlas's point about that first message that goes out, you kind of have to wait for the second and third, because that's just letting you know, hey, you're going to see some activity going on because we have to take this seriously. This is what's going on. This is what the reports are, and here's what we're looking for. And right now we're getting those second and third reports saying now that the base is all clear. They're still going through to make sure everyone is okay building by building, but so far they're getting the all clear that there is no active shooter, thankfully, here on base, as Sky 12, it looks like now appears to be over Luke Air Force Base. It was Air Force Base rather was on its way there, and so they got the all clear. That is the newest update. But Atlas, to Tram's question here, yeah, how do you go through and make sure that you can tackle any threat that's there, or just really take these seriously, and then we can give everyone the all clear? What do they do as that is happening?
Yeah, let me just add one more thing. I'm going to answer that question because it is very important, and I think everyone has that question whenever they hear this. But the other thing is there's 500 homes on Luke Air Force Base. That's home to 500 families. So you're 100% right saying it's a city within a city. There are a lot of people that have addresses. There's a post office there as well. And each one of those buildings has a function that you named out. And each one of those buildings gets cleared by a team. When we used to do exercises like this, we would have bad guys that would pretend to be bad guys, and then they would get found in a relatively short amount of time because of the communication that happens on the radio and through the dispatch. And then it's a military installation. They communicate with each other really well. So like I said, if somebody were to do something like that, it's almost a death wish because it is so Loctite with security. So I'm glad to hear that it's all clear. I'm glad to hear that everybody's safe. This is fantastic news. But yeah, going building to building and clearing them out through radios, that's how they do it. And it's tedious, and they will make sure that it's still safe. I guarantee it.
Yeah, that is very encouraging to hear. And I mean, it just goes back to all the training that the folks at Luke Air Force Base do to ensure that they know not only those on base know what to do in case of an emergency like this when there is a lockdown, but also know how to handle it.
Yeah, very true. I mean, what we're seeing right now is Sky 12, a little bit hard to make out, but you're getting that aerial view from Luke Air Force Base, located in Glendale in the West Valley. And, well, a little bit hard to make out here, but we have seen lines of cars out there. Obviously, they had a lockdown here, so people weren't going to be allowed out, and they weren't going to be allowed in. And so we're starting to see people trickle out from the base here, where we didn't see any of that activity just about 10 minutes or so ago. The line's still long for people to get on base here because security is going to be tight, and maybe even tighter after a situation just like this. But some people starting to be released from the base who will go off after this active shooter situation caused for a lockdown on the base. Thankfully, Glendale PD telling us that there was no active shooter found here, and so they're going to be trying to figure out now exactly what prompted this, how this happened. But the good news is, Atlas just mentioning here, our military expert here who served himself, is that they go through building by building, making sure everyone's good, and now that base does have the all clear, Tram.
Yeah, there's a lot of movement happening. Atlas, I don't know if you have access to a TV screen and you're seeing what we're seeing, but you know, we still saw that line of traffic. It looks like trying to get in. There is absolutely no movement on that side to the right there, but a lot of cars exiting, which I guess is a good sign because they are allowed to leave. But obviously it almost seems as though there's still somewhat of maybe perhaps a little bit of a lockdown as far as people being allowed in.
Yeah, they normally lock down the base. Unfortunately, I can't see the screen. I'm out at a gun TV, a gun show in Queen Creek right now. And so whenever I heard about this, of course, you know, my immediate thought was, oh my God.
All right, some good news in a scary situation there just outside of Glendale at Luke Air Force Base. As they were saying, one of the larger Air Force bases in the country where the active shooter threat has now been I guess, cleared. They are now
They gave
able
them all
to
cleared,
leave.
yeah.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see what led to this. But as investigators continue to look into that, knowing that everyone there is now safe, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in about 2 minutes with some more coverage from our local area. Welcome back to Live Impact News, continuing our coverage now of this tragic plane crash that killed NASCAR legend Greg Biffle, as well as his family and 3 others. So I just want to push to this one more time. We're going to keep saying it throughout the day, but at 3 p.m. is when we are expecting that update from the NTSB. Again, it is preliminary. These NTSB investigations typically take more than a year for the complete and thorough investigation, but this is going to be what they have as of one day of investigating. So that's going to be at 3 p.m. We're going to have a crew there. We have them there now. They're going to bring that back to us live, and we're going to stream it here so you can watch it in entirety to see everything we know so far. As we continue to wait on those updates from officials on the crash itself, we do want to continue our remembrance of Greg Biffle and his legacy. Carly, I know you're a NASCAR fan.
Yes.
And we got to speak with someone pretty cool.
Miles, just about an hour ago, got the chance to speak with Doug Rice. And if anybody has ever listened to the Performance Racing Network, he was the legendary play-by-play calling these races for years and years. He just stepped out of the booth, I want to say, is like last year was his last time calling the race. I mean, legend in just motorsports broadcasting.
Sure.
Still the president of PRN, I believe. So very influential guy. Been in the game for decades.
Yeah.
So called a countless number of races that Biffle drove in.
Sure had, fostered a personal relationship with him as well.
Sure.
Over the years. So Miles got a chance to speak with him about how he hopes his legacy will be remembered.
Doug, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Obviously, we're following up on the unfortunate tragedy when it comes to Greg Biffle and his family. I want to ask you, what is your relationship with Greg?
Well, I covered Greg as a racer for his entire NASCAR career when he was in the Cup Series. He had a really nice career with Jack Roush. And so I covered him that way, had many, many opportunities to interview Greg over the years. And there was one year that he was one of our rotating co-hosts on our syndicated show, Fast Talk, after the passing of Benny Parsons. And he and Benny were really tight. We just thought it appropriate to bring Greg in and have him co-host some shows. So I knew him fairly well. We were not close, but we had a nice working relationship.
What would you say, whether it was a racer or as a person, that really stuck out with him, though?
He was very fan forward. I did a show on Sirius XM yesterday for 5 hours and talked to a lot of fans. And the interaction I got from every one of them was, I met Greg Biffle. He stopped and talked to me. He signed my hat. He engaged me in conversation. He didn't blow me off. And that says a lot. And that helped grow allegiance of fan. And I feel like he was almost an everyman. He never gave the air that he was above the people that were pulling for him. He was one of them. And I think that made it a lot easier to like the guy.
I was going to say, because I feel like, that reflects on kind of the work that he did even outside the track as well, with his humanitarian work with Hurricane Helene, things of that nature, right? So
he was a very blue-collar guy. I think that's accepting. Let me rephrase that. He was very blue-collar. But that's even harder when you've had the level of fame and success that Greg Biffle enjoyed. He won 19 races. He won a Craftsman Truck Championship. He won a Busch Series title. So he won a lot and was very famous, but it didn't get to him. He maintained his kind of middle-class background, I think.
So let me ask you then, though, too, because I know that you said you had somewhat of a relationship, not super close, but what was your reaction to hearing the news that kind of broke yesterday?
Oh, just devastated. Just absolutely devastated. I don't think, even though these type of things happen all the time in the world that we're in, you ever get used to them. And the part that just knocked me back was I realized his family was on there and 3 other people. This was not just a singular thing. This was a tragedy that is just hard to wrap your arms around, especially when you know one of the people and you realize he disappeared along with his family.
And not my last question, but I do want to ask you, how will you plan to remember Greg moving forward?
That is a very good question. I'm going to remember Greg Biffle in 2 different ways. One, that he was a very good race car driver. He will probably be in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. He won 19 races, and he raced for the same team the entire time he was in the Cup Series. But as of late, with all of the humanitarian things that he did in helping resupply the people in the western North Carolina mountains, that's the freshest memory I have of Greg Biffle. So I think it's going to be 2 things. One, that he was a really, really good racer, but he may have been a better person than he was a NASCAR driver, and he was pretty good at both.
What do you make of, I'm kind of catching up with it a little bit, though, too, but seeing the reaction throughout the all-sports world, but specifically with the motorsports world, we're seeing guys like Denny Hamlin, Jeff Gordon, all these guys kind of reacting to this news, though, as well. What do you make about that? What do you think that says about the community of NASCAR as well, wrapping around this family during this time?
Well, Biffle was very well respected. When he left the game, there was nobody going, well, I'm glad he's gone. I'm glad he's out of here. He earned and garnered the respect of everybody he ever raced against. That's not saying that he didn't have a couple of disagreements along the way, but he was super well respected. And he came back kind of late in his career and won a truck race down at Texas Motor Speedway. So he still had talent left in the tank when he walked away. And it is interesting to watch the NASCAR community join together like this, especially when it's about a week away from the settlement of an antitrust lawsuit that people thought was going to tear the sport apart. And here they come, as they always do in the time of tragedy, and everybody sings with one voice.
And I think, again, that goes back and echoing the kind of impact that Greg has had with that world and that community as well, right? That says that turns that full circle to go back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And people in the NASCAR world saw the same thing. A person that was giving, had a lot of philanthropy, but also a person that was very talented that contributed to the sport on the track. And I am glad that Greg received some notoriety for what he did away from the track. I am so pleased that the state of North Carolina recognized him. He got the Order of the Longleaf Pine Award, which is the highest civilian award, and he very well deserved that.
My last question that I have for you, though, Doug, because you mentioned it a little bit ago, he had a lot of success on the track, though, as well, right? But he just treated everybody as if, he was one of them. How rare or how hard is that to come by in any sports world, but specifically with what with NASCAR?
I think it's very difficult because NASCAR drivers and pro athletes all across the board are very busy people by nature. It's practice, it's playing, and they have very little time to themselves, especially the drivers. And for him to go that extra mile to relate to the fans and take that time, that says a lot about him. I don't think he ever lost track of the fact that the fans, the people that watch on television, listen on the radio, and buy the tickets are the life's blood of this sport. And I think he went out of his way to pay that back over and over.
Doug, I appreciate your time as always.
Really helpful interview there from Miles and Doug Rice. Just great to hear from people in the community who knew him either personally or worked with him for a long time. Really paints the picture of how broad his reach was. We're going to take another quick break, but we'll be back in 2 minutes. All right, welcome back to Live Impact News. It is almost 2 o'clock when we're going to get an update from Jesse Pierre, who's out there in Statesville. Just talked to the mayor a little while ago. But while we wait for that, we want to get another check of your forecast with Larry Sprinkle.
Good Friday afternoon. Not a cloud in the sky, considering this morning was rainy and heavy winds and even stormy in some spots. So really good at Monroe, looking great. Not a cloud in the sky there. A Lake Norman camera looking fantastic. A tower cam over in Dallas and uptown. Sunshine. Carolina blue skies. We did have rain that hit really basically this morning. Almost a half an inch rain reported up in the mountains. A little over 1/10 of an inch here in Charlotte. You can see a little over, I would say almost an inch there at Hickory, and over in places like Statesville, they topped almost 1/3 of an inch of rainfall. So the rain is gone. It is out of here. And for today, as we head into the afternoon, temperatures in the mid to upper 50s. By around 6 o'clock this evening, sun going down. We're about 50 at that time. If you're out and about this evening, late this evening, around 11 o'clock, under clear skies, temperatures at that time will be in the upper 30s. Now, winds sustained in the daytime, but between about 10 and 20 miles per hour, but they'll calm down considerably if you're out and about as you head into the evening now. So for today, sunny skies. It'll be a windy day tomorrow. will be, we'll say, comfortably cool. And Sunday afternoon, milder temperatures close to 60 degrees. Now, there will be some neighborhoods that actually make it into the mid-60s on Sunday afternoon. Check it out for your weekend. Looking okay, not too bad at all. At 58, sunshine with a morning low of 30 on Saturday, tomorrow. And Sunday morning, we start about 37. 64 in the afternoon for a high temperature. Not expecting any precipitation anytime soon. In fact, dry weather continues. And this is 7 days. Not quite often that we don't include at least maybe an opportunity, but yeah, not a chance of rain at all the way as we head into next week, into Christmas week. So plans outside, we'll enjoy it. Speaking of outside, how about the forecast? Tampa Bay Bucks taking on the Carolina Panthers. Game time, 1 p.m. Bank of America Stadium. Kickoff temperatures should be in the mid-50s. We're going to look for winds pretty light, right around 5 to 7 miles per hour. And right in the middle of the game, we're at 60 degrees at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Pretty close to perfect weather on the sunny side. It's going to warm up. In fact, probably going to feel more like it's about 75, 80 degrees if you're right in the middle of the sunshine. But anyway, it's going to be a great afternoon for victory at the stadium. And check this out. Over the next 10 days, we have one day where the temperatures will be much cooler than average, and that just happens to be Monday at 51. But we see a major rebound in the temperatures. Now, we're not going to set any record high temperatures, but certainly well above the average as we get into next week. We have a couple days there late next week with high temperatures into the low 70s, almost spring-like with all those sunny skies out there. By the way, we did have an average of about 54 this time of the year. 34 is the average low. Record high 1984 on this day in history. We topped out at 76, and it could get pretty cold. The year was 1884. You got to go way back in the 1880s, 11 degrees on this day in history. Overnight tonight, we're looking for low temperatures around 27 at Boone, over around the Salisbury area in Rowan County, about 25, near 30 in the Charlotte metro area. Then looking into next week, where the lows go, we got the coldest days of next week, in the mornings at least, Monday and Tuesday in the low 30s. And check this out. Next Friday morning, that 52, that is the low temperature, getting close to the average high this time of the year. And once again, I mentioned spring-like temperatures. Check it out. Here's Jerry Hunt, 7-day forecast. Today we're in the upper 50s, more of the same tomorrow. There you go. Sunday afternoon at 64. We're at 51. That cool day on Monday, pretty close to average on Tuesday, then way above average. Christmas Eve daytime temperature in the upper 60s, more of the same on Christmas Day, so some warm weather headed that way. That's your forecast. Have a nice day and a great weekend. I'm Larry Sprinkle.
And we also want to push to our parades that we're going to have featured every night here, other than the weekends, until Christmas Day. Of course, tonight is the Fort Mill Christmas Parade. That's going to be on sometime after our live impact in the evening ends at 9 p.m. So you'll have something in the evening to look forward to. A shout out to this nice graphic that Carlene made.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is about as much snow as we're going to get here in the metro for Christmas. So enjoy it now. Soak it in. If you wanted a white Christmas, there you go.
You heard Larry. It's not going to be anything close to that.
It's not gonna happen.
And then we are looking forward to Christmas Eve when we're going to have the NORAD Santa Tracker, of course, live. So much fun. We know he starts in Australia and then delivers a gazillion presents between then and the next day. I mean, goodness, guy doesn't sleep.
Working real hard.
Doesn't sleep.
No.
Yeah, pretty amazing. So we're going to take another quick break, but know that this is coming up later today if you're looking for some festive spirit. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back to Live Impact News. We're going to take you to a breaking news scene. This is out of Minnesota, so it's nowhere near here, but it's a really, interesting scene here. We're trying to get some more information about a barricaded subject. This is outside of Minneapolis, and I believe what's called Nowthen, and the entire area here has been told to shelter in place because there's so many things happening here. We know we've seen SWAT cars, but the house is also on fire, it appears.
It appears. Like, we pulled this up during the break, and Julie and I are kind of puzzled because the news says barricaded subject, but like you can see, like that's plumes of smoke.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure what this building is, but we've seen SWAT cars, so we know that there's also a standoff happening at the same time. And I believe this image is from our KARE 11 that's got a helicopter up there. So we're still waiting to get more information. So far, what we know, again, this is still an armed barricaded subject. The sheriff's office said efforts to negotiate with the suspect are ongoing. Officers could be seen approaching the residence before appearing to fire shots and retreating, is what KARE 11 is saying is happening here. That's our NBC News partners out of Minneapolis. No one's sure how this fire started, though. They do acknowledge they see smoke billowing from the building.
From multiple windows here. You see this, like, it's from
significant fire.
Significant fire.
Yeah, no flames that I'm seeing yet, but clearly some sort of...
That black smoke, again, Jane Monreal, married to former firefighter, says black smoke means things that are flammable are being burned.
Yeah. So this is obviously an ongoing situation, about 35 miles, I think, northwest of Minneapolis. So it's not too far from the city. It's out there, but still, they were able to get here pretty quickly. I'm seeing flames for the first time. So this is still actively,
There it is on that left side of the house right there. What in the world?
I think maybe we hold on this for a second. Coverage with other things right now, and if this feed comes back up, we'll put it up on the screen because it is just very interesting. Hopefully we get some resolution soon because it seems like a lot is happening there. Carlene, I think while we're still waiting for Jessie Pierre. She's going to be here very soon to talk more about reaction in Statesville to the death of Greg Biffle and his family. We're also, though, awaiting President Donald Trump, expected to get here in Rocky Mount in North Carolina this evening to support Michael Whatley in his Senate campaign, but also to tout his economic policies. So we're going to get to the Democratic response to that, which we saw just a couple hours ago today.
Good morning, North Carolina.
Good morning.
My name is Dorian Palmer, and I serve as the Coalitions and Community Engagement Director for the North Carolina Democratic Party. Here's what we know. We know that Eastern North Carolina was a Democratic stronghold for 120 years in our state. And we know Donald Trump knows that, and we know Michael Whatley knows that. We know that as we go into next year, fighting for Eastern North Carolina, fighting for folks across our state is going to be critical. And that's something Roy Cooper has shown he's been able to do since 1986 when he's led this state. Folks, the work we have to do is to show up for communities, to fight for them, and remind folks that Donald Trump does not speak for Eastern North Carolina or for this state, and neither does D.C. insider lobbyist Michael Whatley. Folks, what we know going into today is they're going to say things about Governor Cooper that's not true. What we know is they're going to say things that the folks across North Carolina know to be untrue, as they voted for Roy Cooper every election in North Carolina since 1986. We know that. We know they're going to say things that are divisive, untrue, and harmful, and we know Donald Trump is not fighting for the people of North Carolina. Folks, we saw just the other day that Donald Trump continues to say things that cause harm and division, and we need a person in our U.S. Senate who will provide loyalty and growth and continuity of care and services, and that's why, folks, we're excited to vote for Roy Cooper, and why Michael Whatley will cause harm and is not good for the folks of our state. Folks, I want to introduce you now to Chair Anderson Clayton of the North Carolina Democratic Party. We're excited to have her. Thank y'all so much for being here this morning.
Dorian is from rural western North Carolina, but has been all over eastern North Carolina with the state party as we have traveled throughout the state over the last 3 years, making the case and also trying to rebuild our party in places of the state that oftentimes have been forgotten even by the people that currently represent it. But good morning, and thank y'all for being here today. I deeply appreciate it. Donald Trump is coming to North Carolina tonight to lie and say that costs and the economy are great right now. And if you're somebody who's just had to go to a grocery store recently, you know that's not true. Costs aren't down, and Trump and D.C. Republicans are making life less affordable than ever, especially for people here in North Carolina and especially people in eastern North Carolina. North Carolina families are facing skyrocketing costs because Republicans have created a health care crisis and refuse to fix it. They've gutted Medicaid. They put 5 rural hospitals in North Carolina at risk of closing already. They continue to refuse to extend the ACA tax credits, which means that on January 1st, every single person across North Carolina is going to see their health insurance costs skyrocket. We couldn't understand a North Carolina that doesn't prioritize health care and education in it, especially after yesterday when we just saw a North Carolina legend unfortunately pass away. Governor Jim Hunt was a legacy in North Carolina, somebody that stood up for the fact that no matter what your zip code is, you deserve to have the opportunity and the access to health care and to education. And what we've seen from Republicans in North Carolina and from a Donald Trump administration is an administration that's willing to destroy and demise the social safety net that has kept so many people across North Carolina not only in this state, but able to thrive in this state. In 2026, we're going to elect a U.S. Senator. And who we choose to elect could be the difference between affordable health care or medical debt, between cheaper groceries or going hungry, and between a champion who will fight for North Carolina or for a D.C. insider that's handpicked by Republicans who's also going to face a primary himself, because even the grassroots know that Donald Trump handpicked Michael Whatley for this seat. And you might have heard of that D.C. insider. He's pushing the same agenda that is hurting North Carolina families across this state. Michael Whatley supports gutting Medicaid for hundreds of thousands of North Carolinians, calling it a huge win, saying that he would have voted for it in a heartbeat if he had been our U.S. Senator. And we know that right now, Tom Tillis, the reason why he's not running for re-election is because he was faced with that hard choice of having to say 600,000 people across North Carolina immediately deserve to have that health care access revoked that Governor Cooper fought so hard to get in a bipartisan deal right for decades across this state. Whatley has called for the repeal of the ACA, and now he supports the Republicans refusing to extend the ACA tax credits in D.C., making health care less affordable for people across this state. And tonight, Michael Whatley is welcoming those same D.C. politicians that people across North Carolina, to me, seem pretty fed up from, inviting them back to our state with open arms, rubbing it in the face of families who can no longer afford their health care, or having to look at their children who rely on Medicare right now and Medicaid right now and asking them what they're going to do. And Whatley wants us to elect him to the United States Senate. No way. Thank you, North Carolina. If we know one thing, it's that Whatley will always side with D.C. politicians to hurt working families and make life more expensive. And after all, that's what he spent his entire career doing. Whatley is a lifelong D.C. political hack, a big oil lobbyist who has spent his career putting billionaires and special interests ahead of families across the United States, not just in North Carolina. We deserve leaders who will lower health care costs and make it easier for North Carolina families to get ahead. Governor Cooper has spent his life delivering for working families, and as governor, he made it his mission to expand Medicaid to the nearly 700,000 North Carolinians who are at risk of still losing their health insurance. And at a time when we're in the middle of a health care crisis, when families can't afford coverage, we need leaders like Roy Cooper in the U.S. Senate, right? Right. Look, no matter what Donald Trump says tonight, remember that he and Michael Whatley are attacking our health care, making it unaffordable, and Whatley will continue to champion that agenda in the United States Senate. And that's why we're going to reject Michael Whatley next November. And I need everybody who's watching this, who's angry about an administration and what they've done, to step up in your backyard today. Candidate filing ends today in North Carolina at 12 p.m., and we're excited to make sure that we're contesting every single seat humanly possible responsible to ensure that we're holding Republicans accountable in North Carolina, even under gerrymandered maps that they've given to us so far. We're not going to leave a stone unturned this year, and we need your help in making sure that these candidates have the resources and the boots on the ground across North Carolina. So I hope you'll get involved today. But thank you for being here. Do I have any questions from my press?
Yes. How important is this So that was the Democratic reaction from earlier today as we await President Donald Trump's visit to Rocky Mount. He's expected to support Michael Whatley in his campaign for U.S. Senate to represent North Carolina. He's also expected to tout his economic policies, which he's been doing over the last couple of days. First, we're actually expecting an announcement from drug prices from him. And so multiple things happening today from the White House, specifically impacting here in North Carolina. So we're going to keep you updated on that when we learn more. Of course, though, we want to get back to the big story of the last day and a half now, the death of Greg Biffle and his family and 3 others in a devastating plane crash in Statesville. We're not just getting more information, hopefully very soon here at 3 p.m. from the NTSB on what happened during this crash. We're also getting a chance to hear from people who knew him, from his community, from the NASCAR community, people impacted by the entire family's philanthropy, and specifically Mooresville, where he lived most recently. And that's where we find our Jesse Pierre, who's in front of what looks to be a memorial. Jesse, I know you've gotten to speak to the mayor and some other people who knew of his impact. What can you tell us today?
Well, you know, we're here on Main Street near his Walk of Fame star, and folks have been stopping by and, you know, dropping flowers, some sharing stories about him. And, you know, if we can get closer, you can see the star and some flowers here in a wreath that was brought here. And this was actually just, he was inducted just a few months ago. And so, you know, having this place that folks can come and just kind of share memories and just kind of think of Greg Biffle and everything he has done. Now, when it comes to sharing stories, you know, people are just, you know, they just remember him as an amazing man, of course, you know, with the racing and his career, but everything he has done to really give back. I've spoken to some folks who talk about how he used his own helicopter to bring relief to the western port of North Carolina after Hurricane Helene. And just, you know, he's remembered as a humble person, a person who always gave back. I spoke to the Mooresville mayor, Chris Carney, earlier, and he talked about how, you know, they just met for dinner just not too long ago, and he then went to do a Toys for Tots and getting gifts for kids who are in need. And, you know, anyone I speak to, they just have so many great things to say about Greg Biffle. And of course, it's devastating, his loss, but, you know, his children and everyone who lost their lives in this crash. It's just a huge loss, and I think there's a lot of people who are heartbroken by everything that has taken place yesterday and again throughout the day. It's just been a growing memorial, flowers, and just, you know, moments of just thoughts of Greg Biffle, his family, everyone again who lost their lives, and everyone who is connected or hurt by all of this. And I think, you know, I think we can all feel something as far as also knowing that children lost their lives in this tragic way as well. But this is kind of what we've been hearing here, and, you know, especially with folks in Mooresville, because he lived in this area, it's a heartbreaking day for many.
Yeah, Jesse, absolutely. And zooming into those memorial notes and seeing people say, you know, to my friend, just really paints the picture here of how people are feeling. I know you've got a lot of work to do. I know you're live at 4, 5, and 6, so we'll let you get back to what you need to do, but thank you for taking the time to speak with us. We are going to take a quick break here and then continue our coverage of the tragedy that is this plane crash and the death of Greg Biffle and his family and 3 others. We'll be back in 2 minutes. All right, so we want to get back to some national news real quick and let you know that we are awaiting President Donald Trump to speak any minute now. You can see this podium is all set up, as well as the officials behind him. He's expected to speak on lowering drug prices. We don't have any more specifics yet, but this is ahead of actually his trip later today to Rocky Mount, North Carolina, to support Michael Whatley in his Senate campaign. So busy day at the White House and for President Trump. We will bring this to you when we get it, as long as it's not conflicting with our 3 p.m. press conference, which we'll prioritize the NTSB update, of course. But speaking of North Carolina and things happening in the state, we also wanted to get back to something that NCDP Director Anderson Clayton mentioned at that press conference we just brought you, the death of former Governor Jim Hunt. He's the only 4-term governor in state history. One of his biggest priorities being public education, and it's a family history of being in politics, of course. His daughter, Rachel Hunt, now our lieutenant governor, she is the one who confirmed his passing last night. So we had a chance to speak with Michael Bitzer. Dr. Bitzer is a political science expert at Catawba College, who we talk to quite often about his legacy, about his time in office, and what he means. So here's this interview from this morning.
This morning, reaction pouring in over the death of former Governor Jim Hunt. As North Carolina's longest-serving governor, he's widely credited for helping create the thriving state that we all enjoy today.
And we're also seeing something unique nowadays, universal praise across the political aisle. Professor Michael Bitzer joins us now from Catawba College this morning. Professor, thanks for joining us. When I heard the news yesterday, you are one of the first people I wanted to talk to, just because I know of the knowledge you have when it comes to North Carolina politics. And as you know, we have so many new faces in the state, not only voters, but also political faces as well. Jim Hunt, though, Jim Hunt was in a category by himself.
I really consider him one of the 2 titans of North Carolina politics in the late 20th century, the other one being the man he faced in 1984 in a bruising and bitter U.S. Senate campaign, and that was U.S. Senator Jesse Helms. I think the Hunt-Helms era of North Carolina politics really speaks to the power of those 2 men to shape how this state, now 25 years later, really is a political influence. And I think for Governor Hunt, he did so much for this state that today we kind of take for granted, but his legacy is certainly one that will be in the history books for some time to come.
We're talking about somebody who served as governor for 16 years. Think about it. It's not common, this time, and not in President Day. And he ran one of the most bruising, as you said, expensive Senate campaigns against Jesse Helms there, even mentioned as a presidential candidate at one point.
Yeah. Yeah, he was. And I think, if you consider 2 of the major changes to the governor's role in this state, North Carolina's governor has historically and currently been considered one of the weakest governorships in the entire country. Jim Hunt got not only the opportunity to run for a 2nd term with passage of a constitutional amendment, he also got the governor the power of the veto, which was North Carolina was the last state to afford that power to its governor. And certainly I think what Hunt's ability to run for 4 terms in this state really shows he was a Democrat who was able to deflect and really fight against Republican tendencies when the rest of the South was going and realigning to the Republican Party. Hunt and a lot of his mentees really helped to keep North Carolina Democrats in a power position that they could win statewide, when at the same time folks like Jesse Helms and Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush and others were winning at the federal level.
I think reaction online, has been we'll say noteworthy. Andrew Dunn, a conservative columnist for The Observer, called Hunt arguably the most important political figure in North Carolina history. Republican Tom Tillis calling him one of the most consequential, and former Republican Governor Pat McCrory called him the governor and was not only a great public servant, but the greatest salesperson ever for our state. Again, we're talking about Republicans talking about a Democrat here. You don't hear that sort of cross-party praise much anymore. And as you pointed to, he and Jesse Helms had nothing in common.
All right, we are breaking into that interview from earlier today because President Trump is currently speaking, so let's listen into this live.
and it's been an amazing thing. And as you know, millions of people pour into our country from the border, and not anymore. They don't know. Nobody comes in actually anymore. But Biden administration, 25 million people came in, and they came from prisons and mental institutions, and they were drug dealers, and all sorts of people came in that shouldn't be here. They came from the jails all over Venezuela, all over. And now when they come in, they have to pay $1 million. And we've had a tremendous surge, and you're going to be happier than anybody because when you go to Harvard and the Wharton School of Finance and all of the great schools and you want to hire somebody and then you find out that, I'm sorry, they can't stay in our country for more than 24 hours. They graduate from the top schools. These people want to hire them. Now you're able to buy a card and you're able to keep people in the country. They can't keep people in the country. And they go to Canada, they go to other countries. A lot of times they go to Canada even though they work for the companies behind me. So now you're able to buy, the companies are able to buy the card and use it for people coming in to our country so they can stay in our country instead of being shipped out after graduating. They graduate number one in their class at the best school, and they want to go to work for Johnson & Johnson, as an example, who's not here today, who will be here next week. They're well represented here. But they want to go to work for one of the great companies behind me, and you learn they can't do that because they're shipped out of the country. They're not shipped out anymore. So your company will pay a little bit, but that's okay. You'll be able to get them. So I just wanted to, it's called the Gold Card, the Trump Gold Card. Quite a beautiful thing. And you've taken in just a few days, you've taken in over $1.5 billion. That goes all toward reducing debt, goes into the Treasury of the United States. And I thought I'd do this before we start on Most Favored Nations. I want to read this because I would have said it the other night, but I was not allotted too much time, actually. You had a couple of brand new shows opening, and I understand that. But I do want to say, and some people say, oh, you shouldn't say it. It sounds negative. To me, I think it sounds positive. The only reason our unemployment tucked up and went up to 4.5%, which it went up to 4.5%, which is quite a low number, but still, is because we are reducing the government workforce by numbers that have never been seen before. In other words, government jobs are way down. And as you know, we don't need 10 people to fill one job, which is what we had in government in many cases. So the government workforce, by numbers that have never been seen before, has been reduced very substantially, and it will continue to be reduced. 100% of our new jobs are in the private sector. So this is for the last number of months. Think of that, 100%. Are you shocked to hear that? That's the way to make America great again when you think, right? It's the only way. 100% of new jobs are in the private sector. And I could reduce unemployment to 2%, 1%, or practically zero by just hiring people into the federal government, even though those jobs are not necessary, which is what we had before. We had millions and millions of people having jobs that they never even showed up. So I wish that the media would report that the 4.5% is an amazing number. And again, if they don't report it, I guess maybe I'll just let some people go into the federal workforce. It'll look really wonderful. And what we're doing is the only way you can do it to make a country great. You can't have the government jobs, you have to have the private sector jobs, and these are among the biggest hires of private sector. So we have reduced the federal workforce by tremendous hundreds of thousands of people, and that reflects in unemployment, but that will be used up very quickly, and we've 100% of the new jobs, which, by the way, it's a record-setting number of jobs, too, is in the private sector. And I think that'll get even stronger when these buildings being built all over the country, of which they're building some, too, but AI and auto plants and everything else, they're being built all over the country. When that happens, your numbers will be even better. But I would like you to report it the way it is. We don't do the federal workforce jobs. We're reducing that very substantially. I'm thrilled to be joined by the leaders of 9 of the world's largest pharmaceutical manufacturers, all very big names, celebrities in their own right, very, very powerful people, and they head some of the most admired companies anywhere in the world. It's a great group. To announce that they've agreed to offer many of their flagship drugs, really all of their flagship drugs, at heavily discounted, most favored nations prices. In other words, whatever the drug sells for over the world, in the world, whatever the lowest number is, if it's Germany, if it's in UK, anywhere, we will match that price. Right now, sometimes it's 10 times higher. We've been laughed at and scoffed at for years. For years. In fact, I was going to do it in my first term, but unfortunately with the advent of COVID, as you would say, it was not, I don't think it was a very good time to be hitting up Spain, Italy, France, but now we're doing it. So the hardest thing to do was going to be to get a country to do it, because we would have a pill in New York that was for sale for $130, and you could buy it in Germany and France and Spain and someplace anyways. They set their own prices for $10. So we'd pay 10 or 13 times more, we'd pay 5 times more, we'd pay all different prices. Now, whatever the lowest price is. Now, the pharmaceutical companies were difficult, but they also love our country. They knew it was unfair. And they were great. I appreciate it. But the bigger problem was going to be the countries. How are you going to get the countries to do it? And we told them, if you don't do it, we're going to have to use tariffs, and we're going to charge you a 10% tariff, which is far more money than the money we're talking about. And they immediately agreed to do it. So we have all the foreign countries agreeing to do it. If we didn't have the use of tariffs, we would never be able to do this. But we used tariff, and they said, is it a threat? I said, yes, it is a threat. Then they said, we will do it, and they dropped the price. So what's happening, because the world is bigger than the United States in terms of people, that same pill would go from $10 to $20 for them, which is an increase, but it wouldn't go to, midway. But it would go from $10 to $20. Ours would go from $130 to $20. So we dropped way down. They went up a little bit. And everyone knows it's the way it is. They, for years, would just say, no, 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 as medicine got more expensive for us, it would stay. They said, nope, you can't sell it in this country. Let the United States pay. And we had other presidents, all of them, said, okay, we'll pay. So we were subsidizing the entire world. We're not doing it anymore. This is the biggest thing having to do with drugs in the history of the purchase of drugs. And I don't think the maybe press will treat it as a story. This is the biggest front page story that you'll ever see. This has a huge bearing too on the healthcare, because a big part of healthcare is drugs, pharmaceuticals, right, Oz? And this will have a tremendous impact on the reduction of healthcare. The biggest impact is going to be that the money should be paid not to the insurance companies, directly to the people, and the people will buy their own health care. So we're going to be working that. The problem is that the Democrats are very much controlled by the insurance companies that make all that money, but we're not going to let that happen. Starting next year, American drug prices will come down fast and furious, and will soon be among the lowest in the developed world. So in other words, whatever the lowest price for a certain drug, of which these companies make much of it, whatever the lowest price is, that price will come down to that price. So we will get the lowest price anywhere in the world. If they're lower in England than they are in Germany, we take the England price. As of today, 14 out of 17 largest pharmaceutical companies have now agreed. 14 out of 17. Oh, those three they're in deep trouble. But actually, they've agreed, because I think those 3 companies are coming in at a different time next week. So they've agreed. Johnson & Johnson is one of them, right?
After the holidays.
Why? They couldn't do it faster?
No, we're going to be talking about Trump RX.
Oh, okay. Trump RX. Trump RX is doing well. As of today, 14 out of the 17 largest pharmaceutical companies, but they've all agreed, have now agreed to drastically lower drug prices for their American patients, for the American people and patients. This represents the greatest victory for patient affordability in the history of American health care by far, and every single American will benefit. So this is the biggest thing ever to happen on drug pricing and on health care. This will have a tremendous impact on health care itself. I want to thank Sanofi CEO Paul Hudson. Paul? Hi, Paul. I hope they have you in some order. I'll be checking.
Alphabetical, yes, but.
Okay, well, we'll do the best we can. Thank you, Paul. Great company, by the way. Novartis CEO Vas Narasimhan. Thank you very much, Vas. Great job. Genentech CEO Ashley Megaragri. Where are you, Ashley? How are you? Hi. Thank you very much. Great companies. Behringer Ingelheim President John Michael Bors. John Michael, thank you very much. Gilead CEO Dan O'Day. Dan? Thank you, Dan. Great job. It's a good company. Bristol Myers Squibb Executive Vice President Carrie Gallman. Carrie? Thank you, Donna. Thank you very much. GSK CEO Emma Wormsley. Emma? Thank you very much, Emma. Great job. Merck CEO Rob Davis. Great company. Thank you. Great company. How long have you been CEO?
Almost 5 years.
Very good. You're doing a good job. And Amgen Executive Vice President and CFO Peter Griffith. Peter? Thank you, Peter, very much. Thank you very much. You okay? Fake news. We want you to be healthy. Are you all right? The camera's not okay, but she's okay. That's more important. We have good medicine for you. If you need some medicine, one of them can take good care of it. We're also joined by Secretaries Robert F. Kennedy, Jr., Howard Lutnick, Ambassador, and really some incredible ambassadors, Administrator of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Dr. Mehmet Oz, and the FDA Commissioner, Marty Makary. They're doing a phenomenal job. Thank you.
All right, President Trump there is introducing the pharmaceutical and medical companies that are there with him for this announcement. Just know that, and you can see it at the bottom of the screen there, we are really getting close to what we've all been waiting for, which is this update from the NTSB on the plane crash that killed Greg Biffle, his family, and 3 others. We're going to take a quick break, but know that we will bring that to you as soon as we get it. All right, welcome back to Live Impact News. It is just past 2:34 now, so at this point we are counting down the minutes exactly till we get this press conference from the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board. Again, this is going to be preliminary information because they just got there last night, and these thorough NTSB investigations tend to take up to a year, if not more, especially for a crash of this magnitude. So hoping to get some more information because at this point we do not know who is flying the plane. We don't know anything about what happened and what led up to this. So hopefully at least some scene setting information here that we don't already know from the NTSB. That's going to be at 3 p.m. and we will, of course, bring that to you live when we get it. For now, though, heading back to the White House, President Donald Trump is about to leave, actually, to North Carolina, but right now he's still at the White House making an announcement on drug prices.
Massive discounts to all consumers. So massive discounts will be not even offered. It's just going to be a fact. All consumers will get massive discounts. That's TrumpRx.gov. Every new drug produced by these companies in the future will permanently be offered to American patients at most favored nation prices. You know, people used to talk about that for years, but nobody ever did anything about it. No other president did. And it wasn't easy, but it worked out great, and I'm so proud of the people behind me. As an example of the price reductions we have secured through these new agreements, Santa Fe will cut the cost of its blood thinner, Plavix, from $750 to less than $16. Wow. Where's Santa Fe? Where are you? What? That's incredible, huh? Could have gone to $17, maybe. That's amazing. And you're going to do tremendous business. You're going to do much more business. So that's coming from $750. Think of that, $750. And that's the #1 blood thinner. I don't want to know about that. I take an aspirin. To less than $16. Think of that. Bristol Myers Squibb, a great company, both great companies, will cut the price of HIV medication, Raytaz, from nearly $1,500, $1,500 to $217. And it will cut the cost of hepatitis B medication, Baraclude, from $1,400 to $413. Gilead will cut the hepatitis C medication, Epclusa, from nearly $25,000 to less than $2,500. And all prices are like that, because we're bringing them down to the world's lowest price, everything. And these people really are pioneers. What they're doing is so great. And in the end, they're going to do much more business, and it's, I think it's going to even out for them as a company. The countries will have to pay more, but even for them, because of the fact that the world is quite a bit bigger, it won't be very severe, I hope. I also want to thank these companies and their incredible executives for their generous contribution to American national security, because it's really what it is. It's, to a large extent, national security in addition. You can't continue to pay 13, 14 times more than other countries and think you're going to have security. Collectively, they will invest over $150 billion to build up domestic pharmaceutical manufacturing in America. They're going to be, because of tariffs, they're coming in, and I think because of the love of our country, and maybe because of the November 5th election, but because of tariffs, they're going to be coming in. They're building already. Just about all of them have started. They're building their plants in all states all over the country, and they're building incredible pharmaceutical plants. We're going to have close to 100% of our pharmaceuticals in a very short period of time made in the USA. As part of these agreements, Merck will also donate 3.5 tons of antibacterials to be placed in America's strategic reserve. Thank you very much. GSX will donate over 200 pounds of ingredients to make rescue inhalers, which is a big deal, and Bristol Myers Squibb will donate 6.5 tons of blood thinners. We appreciate it. Such amazing companies. Every president for a generation has promised to reduce drug prices. but they were talking about a little bit like that. I am the only one of them to ever even think in terms of favored nations, and that's what this is. Favored nations. It's called most favored nation. We are now a most favored nation. I want to thank the leaders in the room, and I also want to thank the leaders of all of the countries that had to pay a little more so that we were treated fairly. I really do. I want to thank the leaders of countries. And they knew the alternative was not much of an alternative, because if they didn't do it, we were going to charge them tariffs, and the tariffs would have been much more severe than what they did. But they did do it as soon as they realized about the tariffs. Yeah. Then they did it very easily. No, they're very good people. Let's start with Amgen's Executive Vice President, who I already introduced, and I introduced the people here. So I'd like to ask Bobby and Oz to say a few words, and also I'd like to ask if anybody would like to speak on behalf of your company, or just say how great this country is doing. And you're all building tremendous facilities now in the United States instead of other countries that we all know about. But if you'd like to say something. So Oz, do you want to start? And Bobby?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much. Mr. President, he gets taller with time here. Mr. President, each of the 9 CEOs will speak very briefly about what they have done, because it is a patriotic effort. This is affordability in action. We talk about it in abstract, but this is not an abstract concept. This is a very concrete, tangible, personal reality, because we've got moms with sick children who cannot afford their medications, working families cannot make ends meet, seniors on fixed income. We have 80 million people who have to pay more than $100 a month for their prescriptions. They just can't keep up. So this is a hardcore approach to this, driven by a bold leader who's taking bold action. With that action, we've now created a standard for the industry. The 9 leaders behind us run the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world. They're joining 5 other companies that have been through this White House process over the last 2 months. I want to make sure you appreciate that it doesn't happen with just the people in the room. They're wonderful individuals: Chris Klump, Inma Hernandez, John Brooks, Theo Merkel, Corey, Heidi. A lot of folks worked their tails off to make this happen, and that's why we've gotten to the finish line. The prices that President Trump left to the next administration on pharmaceuticals have gone up 25% until the president took office. We are reversing that trend and making sure that Americans can afford to get the life-saving solutions, because if these brilliant innovators create solutions to cancer and hypertension, hepatitis, and a bunch of other viruses, illnesses that have been lethal throughout human history, but you can't afford them, then we're not treating you fairly. And that's why what the president has done is so critically important. He mentioned quickly the amount of money that they've contributed towards our strategic stockpile and to building in this country, but fundamentally the health of the American people will benefit because this president took bold action. And from my personal position, I couldn't do anything I do without Secretary Kennedy, who just does not take no for an answer and will call me even more than the president does to make sure things happen right. Mr. Secretary. Even more.
That's not nice. I don't think that's true. I think we got a lot of calls from the president, and at one point in this negotiation, we both stopped answering our phones late at night because we couldn't take it anymore. But I want to thank you, Mr. President, for doing this. President Trump, when he was up here a moment ago, talked about how historic this is and how every one of the news outlets in here ought to have World War III size headlines about this. And I was reminded about how astonishing this achievement is. A couple of days ago, when one of my sons, 29 years old, very, very left-wing Democrat, and disagrees with a lot of the policies of this administration, he called me and he said, "Dad, I want to tell you how proud I am about this. This is the best achievement that could happen to our country." This is something Bernie Sanders has been clamoring for 25 years. Elizabeth Warren has been clamoring for. Joe Biden promised the American people. President Obama, President Clinton all promised to do this for the American people. All of them expressed their outrage, their indignation that we are paying 1/10 in some cases the price of drugs that they're selling in Europe. We developed them here. We manufactured some of them in New Jersey. We were paying $1,300 for a drug manufactured in New Jersey, the same drug manufacturing the same plant was being sold for $88 in London. And everybody recognized how unfair this was. We were paying for all the innovation in this country. And yet, the rest of the world was free riding on it. And President Trump told me and Dr. Oz at the beginning of
You've been listening in to not just President Donald Trump, but also Dr. Oz and Health Secretary RFK Jr. speaking on this new drug price announcement. So we're going to take a quick break because we are awaiting that press conference from the NTSB and get back into our Greg Biffle coverage in just a couple minutes here. So stick with us. A lot of important stuff coming up. Welcome back to Live Impact News. We are just about 15 minutes away from that press conference that we are anticipating with the NTSB. 3 p.m. is when they told us. We have a crew there already set up. It may be a few minutes after that just because of how these kind of official press conferences tend to work, but know that we're going to be there for whenever it happens, and we will bring it to you here live on Live Impact. But while we wait for those updates on the crash itself, we wanted to continue on remembering Greg Biffle, his family, and the impact he had on the community. He, of course, this crash happened in Statesville, but he actually lived most recently in Mooresville. So our Jesse Pierre got a chance just a couple hours ago to speak with the mayor of Mooresville about his impact.
In general, hearing the tragedy, and obviously, knowing Greg Biffle and his family and obviously others that were impacted, what went through your mind?
I think the first thing Statesville's kind of a smaller airport, as you know, and so essentially when something happens, we always know it's going to be closer to home because it's not like a Concord or a Charlotte where you have so many other. So it's always going to be a business owner or a private aircraft for the most part, and so that automatically had us worried that we was going to be somebody that was pretty close to us, and then of course hearing that it was Greg was pretty awful, especially since he's had such an impactful last year. He went into the North Carolina Racing Hall of Fame. We did his induction down on Main Street just a couple months ago. Obviously, we gave him a resolution for all the work he did in Western North Carolina. And as I was laughing earlier, it was funny because we had to actually trick him into coming because he's so humble he wouldn't have done it. So Christina had to tell him we were going to rezone property next to their house so that he would come and fight it. And then we gave him the resolution. But again, we just had dinner the other night over at Table 31, and earlier that night he did Stocks for Tots and had a line around the Mac Center and out down the street trying to raise toys for needy kids. And he sat there all night long and signed autographs. It truly, post-racing, Greg found such a great side of himself where he and Christina really were able to be very philanthropic and giving of their time and their talents. And he was just a tremendous person post-racing. Racing was awesome, of course, but what people don't realize is what he's done since racing has had such a huge impact on not only just Mooresville, but North Carolina.
You know, what's the supporter, I guess, outpouring, you know, heartfelt? I know I see flowers growing near his memorial. What have you been getting from folks and hearing from folks who are kind of just feeling?
Well, I think it's always hard losing him. I think losing the whole family. I mean, of course, our heart breaks for Nicole, you know, his first wife, and you know, who lost, you know, her daughter as well. So I think that's the harder part. It's just such a gut punch of tragedy that we can't even get past the fact that we lost not just a great person, but we lost a whole family at one time. And any one of us who are parents or you know, it breaks your heart to realize that family is going through that right now. And I think that's really where most of the public's coming from right now, is just sad. It's just a very sad day in Mooresville.
And how long have you guys known each other? You were saying,
oh gosh, back in when he was a young man, before he had children or anything. I remember when you know, he's expecting his first child, daughter. We did a lot of stuff with he had a charity that's very pro animal, Friends of the Animals, and we did a lot of stuff together for that. And I just kind of got to know him through that. So you know, it's been probably 15 years or so, yeah, for sure, maybe longer.
And so, you know, you kind of talked about, you know, all the work and charitable work that he's done, but, you know, as the guy in your neighborhood, in your living room, you know what I mean? Who was he when he just...
So even like when I sent you that picture of us, you can see, like, we're genuinely just laughing together. He was just a normal guy. And I think that people lose track of that. Mooresville, even though we've grown to be somewhat of a bigger place now, we still got a lot of small town feel about us. And when we see each other, we still, you know, people still hug each other, you know, and we still have these intimate relationships where you know enough about each other where it's just not in passing. and to know Greg is to know that, again, post racing, he so enjoyed doing good things for people. Again, the helicopter to West North Carolina, that's just the beginning. There were so many things that he was working on. He was looking at trying to figure out how to help small business owners in our area, and he wanted to figure out how to do some more stuff to help people in racing, and he just had all these ideas, and he had the time and the talents to do it now. And honestly, like I said, he was just on his way up when it came to the ideas he was trying to do to help the community. And it's really just sad because all of that energy we lost, as well as just a great human being. And again, you can't lose track. Christina's awesome. His wife, she really was a great partner. They together, you always saw them together. They were always doing stuff together. She was all involved while they were helping Western North Carolina. And people don't realize those first 3 days, we did a lot with Banner Oak through Mooresville because we have Niagara Water and we have Lowe's. But people don't realize those first 3 days, people in the mountains had nothing. I mean, nothing. The cavalry was not going to get there. And you're talking about washed out road systems and you know, colleges that had no food or water on campus up in the mountains. And so if not for people like Greg, and he was kind of the first one, and once he started running, everybody thought it was a great idea and jumped in behind him. So it just shows you one person really can make a massive difference because he inspired so many other people to jump in.
You may have to take a second to think about this one.
Okay.
But if you had to use 4 or 5 words to describe who this man was, what kind of man he was, what words fit him?
Well, that's a great question. 4 or 5 words to describe Greg Biffle. What would I say that would be? Obviously, it's humbleness, but what is his he's just an awesome dude, man. He's just an awesome dude. We have a mutual friend, Bob Mack, who's probably his best friend, and both of us were just saying, it's so hard to tell people how, because the Greg Biffle, everybody looks, went around the track really fast, right? And you saw him before races, and you saw his family, and and you kind of get this general idea of like what that is, and you assume he's this guy because of that. And in reality, if you walked up to him at a local restaurant and said, "Hey," you'd meet probably one of the coolest, kindest guys you ever met. And there was no air about him. Matter of fact, again, he was embarrassed to get the compliments. Matter of fact, he and I always had this joke that, so he lives on the lake, and we have a group that does this boating, and it brings like tours, and it goes by and hits all the famous people who are on the lake. And so Craig's out there doing some yard work, in his backyard. And all of a sudden the boat pulls up and starts going through his whole resume, this many wins and this many whatever. And Greg laughs and he looks, and he was telling me the story. He's like, hell, I don't even remember winning that one. He goes, that was awesome. The guy knew my better stats than I did. And I mean, that just shows you the fact that, yeah, he was proud of that part of his life, but you can't put in perspective how much more he was enjoying this part of his life. His post-racing, really being involved in the community side, and just gave him a whole new purpose. And he's always been giving, but this is like he took all that energy he had and threw it behind doing good for the community and for his fellow just human beings. And he had a real, it was his passion. He had a real passion. It's like I said, it's tough. And we see this. We say something. The juniors of the world, all these guys, they do such a great job of post-racing figuring out how much they can give back, and it really is amazing to watch. And it's just heartbreaking, because not only to lose him, but to lose his family, but then to also realize there's no telling what he would have accomplished in the next 20 or 30 years, because he really have found a real passion for doing stuff for just his fellow human being. Yeah, it's really the world's definitely not better for him not being here.
Okay.
All right, so that was an interview that our Jesse PR just did a couple hours ago with the mayor of Mooresville, where Greg Biffle and his family lived. We do have, I want to show you this live shot of this press conference, just so you can see that this is what we're working with here. They are set up. This is where they will be giving us updates any minute now. This is at a hotel in the area, and our crew's on the scene there. Carlene, do we want to take a quick break while we wait? Yeah, it's just a couple minutes before we're supposed to get that. I think they're just doing a mic test and stuff right now. But of course we will break into that break if we get any information or they start talking. So stick with us. This is coming up any minute now. Welcome back to Live Impact News. It is 3 o'clock on the dot. Just as we were going to break, we got the 5-minute warning from that press conference that is set up here. It's actually happening now, it sounds like.
This person's just introducing who will be speaking at
I
the
understand.
first, so we're still waiting.
Yeah, so we got probably about 2 or 3 minutes at this point left. Thank you, Carlene. Carlene can hear the show or the presser in her ear, but I cannot. And so we are waiting for this. But I want to run you through everything that we know so far. Of course, this plane crash happened yesterday morning, 10:15 a.m. We got that update from the FAA. You can see this video here. Fiery crash. I mean, the plane completely engulfed. And if you've seen images of it today, which you'll see soon, I mean, it's just, there's nothing of it left. I mean, look at that. You can just see, this is from, I believe, last night.
This is after a couple hours after, the fog kind of lifted a little bit, and
Yeah, and it doesn't look much different today. Of course, crews are still out there. We know the NTSB, who's giving us this update soon, got there late last night, but the death count, unfortunately, just kept going up throughout the afternoon. At first, we thought it was 5, then 6. Now we know 7 people killed. That includes Greg Biffle, his wife, Christina, their son, Ryder, and Greg's son, Emma, from a previous marriage. It also includes Craig Wadsworth, another NASCAR name, and it includes Dennis Dutton and his son, Jack, Dennis being a pilot. We do not know who was flying the plane at this point. That's something that we are hoping to learn more about maybe today, but it might not be today. We don't know at this point. Things are still very early on in the process. Like I said, they just got here last night. At some point, our anchors are going to take over in the main set with extended coverage of this, but we will bring it to you live. I believe they may be beginning to talk, Carlene.
we're going to actually just take this organically here ourselves.
I agree.
So we're going to do round 1.
Let's listen in.
Eastern Standard Time yesterday morning, December 18th, 2025, a Cessna Citation 550 airplane, registration number November 257 Bravo Whiskey, crashed while attempting to land on runway 28 at Statesville Regional Airport here in Statesville, North Carolina. There were 7 souls on board the airplane. Unfortunately, there were no survivors. Before I go on behalf of the NTSB, I want to express our most sincere condolences to the families and loved ones who lost their lives in this terrible tragedy. We know those on board were deeply rooted in this community, and we know it's especially tough on the families this time of year in this community. So you will be in our hearts and our thoughts and our prayers during this time. We do have a representative with us from the National Transportation Safety Board's Transportation Disaster Assistance Division here in Statesville, in contact with the family members of those who lost their lives in this terrible tragedy. They will be providing them with resources they will need to get through this tough time, and also provide updates on our investigation. Accurate information regarding fatalities and injuries stemming from this accident will be provided by the local medical examiner. The NTSB GO team arrived last night, so today was our first day on scene, first full day. I want to briefly give you some background on who we are, our processes and procedures, followed by some factual information about the ongoing investigation, steps our team is taking here on the ground, and what you can expect from us in the coming days. The NTSB is an independent federal agency charged by Congress to investigate all civil aviation accidents and significant accidents in the other modes of transportation. Our mission is to determine the probable cause of the accidents, recommendations to prevent future tragedies like this from ever happening again. We do not assign blame or liability. We are here on scene to gather perishable evidence, which our team methodically and systematically reviews throughout the course of the investigation to determine the probable cause. We have a team of 16 experts from the NTSB here with us, being led by our investigator in charge, Dan Baker. Dan is a senior accident investigator with more than 25 years experience at accident investigations, both at the NTSB and the Air Force. Dan and our team are also supported by our deputy investigator in charge, Andrew Swick, and he is currently at the accident site at this time. I want to emphasize this is the beginning of a very long process, and we will not jump to any conclusions while we're here on scene in North Carolina, nor will we speculate. Early this morning, we held an organizational meeting where we established parties to the investigation. The NTSB offers party status to those we believe provide needed technical or specialized expertise to the investigation. Eventually, each investigative group, which I will describe in a minute, will produce a factual report, which each of the parties will verify its accuracy. Importantly, however, parties do not participate in the analysis or the report writing. Parties to the investigation so far are the Federal Aviation Administration, and they are always a party to an aircraft accident, and Textron Aviation Incorporated, which was the manufacturer of the aircraft. Additionally, Pratt & Whitney Canada, the engine manufacturer, is serving as technical advisor to the investigation. As part of our investigation, we formed groups to examine specific areas of interest in depth. These groups include subject matter experts from the parties of our investigation, working in conjunction with our NTSB specialists on the factual portions of the investigation. For this accident, we have established the following parties. First one is systems. They will examine components of the airplane's hydraulic, electrical, navigational, pneumatic, and associated systems, together with instruments and elements of the flight control system. The group will also examine the maintenance records. Another group is power plants, which will examine engines and the engine accessories. And the final group we have at this time, although we can add groups if necessary, is operations, which will document the history of the flight and the crew members' flight experience, training, and certification. A preliminary report of this accident is expected within 30 days. However, a full investigation lasts 12 to 18 months before a final report is released. The information that we provide today is preliminary, and it's subject to change during the course of this investigation. I would now like to turn it over to our investigator in charge, Dan Baker, to share some factual information. Dan.
Thank you, Member Graham. The aircraft was manufactured in 1981 by the Cessna Aircraft Company, and it was registered to GB Aviation Leasing, LLC. The airplane had taken off at approximately 10:05 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, about 10 minutes prior to the accident. The airplane had departed from runway 28 at the Statesville Regional Airport. Preliminary ADSB data showed the airplane made an initial left turn to the west, followed by another left turn back to the east towards the airport, approximately 5 minutes after takeoff. The airplane then flew a left base turn to runway 28. The initial point of impact was a runway light stanchion located about 1,800 feet from the runway threshold. The airplane subsequently impacted trees, 2 other runway light stanchions, and the airport perimeter fence short of the runway threshold before coming to rest near the runway threshold. The airplane also came to rest oriented on an easterly heading. Post-impact fire consumed the majority of the fuselage and the inboard wing sections. All four corners of the airplane and flight control surfaces have been identified in the wreckage and the debris field. Both engines were present with the main wreckage. At the time of the accident, visual meteorological conditions prevailed with drizzle and broken ceilings at 1,200 and 2,200 feet, as well as a 5,000-foot ceiling were present. The wind was calm with 5 statute miles visibility. I will now hand it over to Member Graham for any questions.
A few more things before I take questions. We are analyzing radar, ADS-B data, video footage, witness statements, audio recordings, and more as part of our investigation. We will also begin coordinating wreckage removal as part of our standard investigation process, and we can move the wreckage to a safe location and make sure it's secure, and so we can follow up and conduct further analysis. I can also confirm that our team was able to locate and recover the cockpit voice recorder, the CVR, one of the black boxes from the aircraft. The aircraft, as we know, it only had the CVR, did not have a flight data recorder, nor was it required to have either one of these for this flight. And that cockpit voice recorder is en route back to Washington, D.C. right now to be analyzed. I'd like to ask if anyone in the public has any photos, videos, door camera video, debris, or were witnesses to this accident. We ask that you please contact us via email at witness@ntsb.gov. Again, that is witness@ntsb.gov. We will provide further updates as they become available. Our team will remain here on the ground in North Carolina as long as we believe it is necessary to gather evidence for our investigation. You can follow the NTSB on X at NTSB_newsroom or on our website at ntsb.gov for the latest information. Finally, I would like to give a heartfelt thanks to in gratitude to the first responders who responded to this accident, as well as the medical examiner's office, the airport director, local and state law enforcement, and all those who have been assisting our investigation since before we arrived and as we arrived here on scene. I know they've been working very hard. We appreciate them securing the site for us and keeping it safe while we are here. And we appreciate all they have done. I will now take a few questions, but before I do, I would like to ask you to raise your hand. When I call on you, please state your name and your affiliation. Right here.
Chris Benavides with CBS News. Just a couple of questions. Do we know who was piloting the aircraft?
Chris's question is, do we know who was piloting the aircraft? At this time, we have been unable to verify who was flying the airplane. We do know 3 of the occupants did possess a pilot's license, but we have been unable to verify that at this time. But that's one of the things we're working on.
And just a couple more questions.
One follow-up, please.
One follow-up, okay. Was there a Mayday call?
The question was there a Mayday call? We are not aware that there was a Mayday call. Right here.
Jordan Bianchi, The Athletic. The plane tried to return back to land. Do we know why that happened? Was it a mechanical issue or anything of that nature?
The question is, we believe the plane was turning back to the airport immediately, maybe for some kind of issue. At this point, we are not aware if there was an actual issue or not. We are studying a lot of things. We are trying to get recordings from the various frequencies that the aircraft may have been on, and any other witness statements that may have heard anything on the common frequency. Right there.
Gary Robertson, Associated Press. What can you tell us about any indications of any problems with the plane as it was going out and then coming back in?
The question is, what can we tell you about if we know of anything of any issues or problems with the airplane as it was going out and that it returned to the airport? At this point, we haven't been able to verify anything. We've seen things in the media and stuff like that, but that's not verification. We're talking to witnesses and we're trying to look at or listen to recordings and whatever to see if there was any issue, but we haven't been able to verify anything at this point. Right there.
Joe Marusak, Charlotte Observer. What was the duration of time from takeoff to the crash?
The question is, what was the duration of time from takeoff to the crash? It was approximately 10 minutes. Right there.
Chris Peterson, WXI TV. Have you had the opportunity to interview witnesses yet, and what kind of information have you been able to garner from those witnesses?
The question is have we had an opportunity to interview any of the witnesses at this point, and what kind of information have we received? At this point, we are doing some interviews right now on site. We're looking for additional witnesses. That's why I've put that out during the briefing. But we don't have anything to share. It's much too early to talk about any of that, and that would be go into our analysis section. Let me come over here. Anybody over here?
Jen Cardone, Queen City News. Was this C-550 Citation jet single pilot or 2 pilots approved or required?
The question is, was the Citation 550 single pilot or 2 pilot approved? The answer is both. Okay. It depends. I believe that at this point there is a waiver that you can have to single pilot operate that aircraft, and many pilots do of this type of aircraft do fly this aircraft single pilot with the waiver, and it can also be flown with a crew.
Stephanie Escobar, Spectrum News. Did the weather play any role in this accident?
The question is, did the weather play any role in this accident? Well, the weather was visual flight rules, but there were low ceilings out there, and there was heavy drizzle at the time. So that is one of the 3 things that we really mainly look at. We look at the people operating the aircraft, we look at the aircraft itself, and then we look at the environment, and the weather is one of those we look at and will look at very closely. Let me come over here.
Gabe Verity with WSOC. Off the end of the runway, into that golf course area, that roadway right there, can you talk about some of the damage? I saw your guys out looking in that area today. Some of the things you found out there.
Sure. The question is about what is some of the damage we've seen just short of the runway 28 that we were looking at today and continue to look at. As Dan had said, the first contact was with some of the approach lighting system. There were several approach lighting systems coming to that, lights coming to that runway that were hit by the aircraft. There was also a tree line on the edge of the golf course before hitting the service road or the aircraft perimeter road out there. That many tree limbs and the trees were knocked down and broken off at that point.
Just quick follow-up. So did it hit the ground prior to getting to the runway? Do we know if that happened?
The question is, did the aircraft hit the ground prior to getting to the runway? The response to that is yes, it did hit the ground before getting to the runway.
Outside the fence of the airport, would that be accurate to say? Or near the fence?
The outside the airport, at the fence is what the question is. It's right in that vicinity is where the witness marks are. So we're still evaluating that at this time. Right here.
Katie Solt, WBTV. Was the proximity of the trees to the runway believed to be a factor at all in the plane's attempt to make an emergency landing?
The question is, was the proximity of the trees to the airport a factor in the plane's ability to land at the airport? The airport actually sits a little bit up on the hill on the plateau, so the trees would have been in line with the lighting above the ground. So we do have witnesses that said the aircraft came in very low. Okay, any over here, right in the back.
Dan with Firewire Communications. The plane took off on runway 10 by what we've been able to see online, and it came back to land at runway 28. Have you talked to the airport director to see why there was any reason he didn't land on runway 10 and made the turn to go to 28?
So the question is, the aircraft took off on runway 10, and when it came back, it landed on runway 28. We are still evaluating why. As we looked at the winds, either direction would be appropriate. You normally want to land into the wind. There was reported no wind at that time. So that's one of the things we're looking at this point. It's going to be some time to get to that.
Have you been able, I'm sorry, Dave Verity with Channel 9. Have you been able to determine if there were possibly maybe some other aircraft in the area that forced him to make the go-around?
Question is, were there maybe some other aircraft in the area that forced him to go around? At this time, we're not aware of any, but we're looking at any radar, ADS-B data. I don't think we saw any initially on the ADS-B data out there that there were other aircraft. That's all I have on that at this time. Blue Jack.
Joe from Charlotte, Joe Marusak, Charlotte Observer. Just a follow-up question. What was the length of the debris field?
The question is, what was the length of the debris field? I think we believe the first contact was 1,800 feet from the approach end of the runway. So it's fairly long, and it is scattered wide and out. So it's going to take some time to document all of that. We were unable to get our drone launched today with the high winds. So we want to get that digitally documented with the drone here, hopefully tomorrow, and we'll get a better idea of how wide and how much debris is out there. Right there.
Melissa Rademacher, Fox 8 News. What type of information might witness statements or people providing pictures and videos give you that you wouldn't be able to find otherwise?
The question is, what kind of statements or evidence might witnesses or videos be able to provide us? Videos sometimes will tell us a lot, give us additional information about maybe where the aircraft first struck the trees or something like that. Additional video on approach would be really helpful to us to get an idea of how high or low that aircraft was. Witnesses sometimes with something they heard, something they saw, things like that. We've received a lot of things, but we have been unable to verify any of it at this point, and any of it as being credible. Right there.
Gary Robertson with AP. There have been some media reports about one of the victims texting a family member saying, quote, "We're in trouble." Are you aware of that text, its veracity, and/or is it playing a role in your investigation?
Question is, there may have been a report of somebody texting out from the aircraft that they were in trouble. At this time, we're not aware of that. If somebody is aware of a text or anything like that, please make us aware of it and let us know via email, and then we'll contact you. And same with the videos. If you have a video, contact us, and we'll give you a way to send it to us, because sometimes those videos don't always come across with a straight email. Right there.
Sarah Johnson, Statesville Record and Landmark. Do you have an ETA of when the airport will be able to reopen?
Question is, do we have an ETA of when the airport will open? At this time, I can't tell you that. Like I said, we still are in the process of documenting the accident site, and it'll be at least through tomorrow at this point. Right here.
Jordan Bianchi, Athletic. You said some witnesses had said the plane was coming in very low. What else have witnesses said about anything they may have seen?
The question is, I made a mention of some witnesses talked about the aircraft being very low, and you're asking what have other witnesses said. At this point, we haven't been able. I haven't been able to speak with our team on that, and it's information that we want to first verify before we're definitely sure. I mean, we're able to verify the aircraft was low because of the contact with the approach lighting and the trees, but the rest of it we haven't been able to verify at this point. Thank you. Two more questions. Right there.
A follow-up, this specific type of Cessna, have there been past issues or crash investigations with this specific type of plane? Maybe how many, how prevalent?
The question is, have we had similar investigations and crashes of this aircraft and everything? We do a lot of crash investigation out there, and there's quite a few every year. I say this aircraft has been around a long time, and there are quite a few of them still in service. So I would say, aviation's very safe, and I don't see any specific issues with this aircraft that are significant compared to any others at this point. Last one.
You may have answered this earlier. How old is the aircraft itself?
How old is the aircraft is the question. It was manufactured in 1981. And there's a lot of aircraft out there that are a lot older that, as long as you keep up with your maintenance and inspection programs that all these aircraft should be on, they can fly for quite a long time. Okay? That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, you've been listening into that new press conference that's just happening live with the NTSB. They were giving us an update on what they know. Again, this is preliminary and all subject to change, as Carlene and I have been reminding everyone. I want to start with the fact that we didn't learn a whole lot about, and we didn't know who was flying the plane at this point, which is what we're hoping to find out. They cannot share that information. They don't know at this point. But we will not know the full details until 12 to 18 months out.
Right.
That
They
is
said
when
the
the full
first
report will
prelim
come.
report will be within 30 days.
So we'll get something very soon.
Yes.
Yes. But the full report, and that's not unusual in these types of cases, are going to be over a year, most likely. So some things that we learned, again, we do not know who was flying, but we do know the time of duration of the flight was about 10 minutes.
10 minutes from takeoff to crash.
We know that they do have a black box, so that means that the cockpit voice recorder.
Cockpit voice recorder.
Yeah.
I'm not an aviation expert. Hopefully somebody can wait. Is there a difference? Are there two different things? Blah, blah, blah.
They did say one of the black boxes that they found, so yes.
That's now being sent away for investigation. I
Mhm.
believe they said they were sending away to DC for investigation.
Yeah, I think NTSB headquarters.
Yes.
So we'll get some, that's a lot of information right there that we'll
Right.
find in that, but I'm sure that takes a while.
Right. We got unclear right now if weather was a factor. They said the clouds were kind of low ceiling clouds. It was drizzly.
Yeah.
Unclear at this point whether that played a role or not.
Yeah.
We're told.
We know that they made contact, which we had suspected in the flight path that Brad showed us first
Yes.
thing yesterday. We know that they made contact with what they called a light stanchion, an airport light stanchion. That was the first contact, then trees, then 2 more light stanchions before it hit the runway. So they were already flying low enough to make impact before they crashed into the runway. So
Right.
whether that was because of visibility or some kind of mechanical problem, they're not able to say at this time.
Right. We've got, hit the ground before the runway about 1,800 feet. So it's quite a bit of ways.
Yeah.
So a lot of debris. I mean, the debris field, what we've seen in our videos, it spans quite a bit. It's a lot of pieces to put that together.
Yeah, this is a lot, and I know you're seeing in the bottom right corner, you're seeing what it looks like now.
I can bring that up full in a second.
Yeah, and that's video from last night, but that is, it looks the same today while they continue to investigate. We do know that the Statesville Airport is closed and will continue to be closed until this investigation is finished. They don't know when that is.
They said definitely be closed, I think, through tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, but we don't know if that means
we aren't sure.
If the next day after that, will it be? We don't know.
Well, this is, as we've always said, active investigation, and so things will change quickly. But they're going to move the remains of the plane to a different location to continue investigating. Carlene, are we missing anything big?
I think that's all. I think we got the main big plot points. We still don't know who was flying the plane. I think that's the number one question everybody kind of had today.
Yeah.
And we still don't know exactly what went wrong.
We don't know what went wrong. In fact, I know we've kind of hypothesized about the fact that they turned around pretty quickly.
Right. I think it said that, from what I gathered, they did a left turn to the east and left turn back east, west, and then back east to the airport. That was about 5 minutes after they took off.
Yeah.
So relatively quickly, something was awry.
Yeah, and we know they were headed, or supposed to be headed to Florida. Obviously, that is not the direction that they ended up going. And so, interesting that NTSB officials didn't necessarily clarify that means something happened.
Right.
We can gather information from prior cases. We've talked to experts who all say the same thing, but they are not ready to make that claim yet, which I thought was notable.
Right.
I think we should take a quick break, Carlene, and then see where we go from here. But again, we've got 30 minutes till our 4 p.m. newscast when you're going to hear from all of our reporters. We've got at least 3 reporters on this story working it from multiple angles, not just what happened here today. Of course, that's the latest, but also how the community is reacting. So we'll be right back in 2 minutes with more coverage on this devastating flight crash. Welcome back to Live Impact News, 3:32 on your clock. We want to get back out to some more of our extended coverage with our in-house experts on what we know so far about this plane crash. Something that we learned today is that they are not able to determine whether or not weather was or was not a factor. Of course, we know that there were low-hanging clouds, there was fog, a little bit of a drizzle. And so while we wait for the NTSB to make that official designation, whether that comes in the preliminary 30-day report or it comes in 12 to 18 months from now for the full report, let's go to our Brad Panovich speaking with Tim, a meteorologist at WFMY, about what the weather looked like at the time of this crash and whether or not they see this as something that could have impacted it.
Was the tragic events that happened up in Statesville, and it's kind of a unique area for us because our two TV markets kind of meet up there, and I know you guys have done stories on Greg Biffle, and this has been a big story for you. What have you guys been talking about today, and what's been the sentiment from the Triad area about this tragic plane crash today?
Well, I think everybody feeling the same way, right? It's just, gosh, how could this happen? It's just super tragic right before Christmas. But we actually, we talked about Greg a lot not that long ago, just a couple of months back, with the Helene anniversary. One of our anchors here, Megan Malera, sat down with Greg. And they talked for about half an hour about the whole Helene operation that he was so active and involved with his aviation, specifically with helicopter missions. And that was one of the things that Greg really contributed out of his own time, his own expense, his own willingness to help out and do something. And I think that just speaks a lot to his character and what he was about. And to see this now with an aviation tie-in and such a tragedy coming about, it's just horrible to see. And I think at this point, Brad, we're still kind of unsure, right? Like what type of cause there could be. I certainly don't have any inside information about that, but the weather has not been the best today. I don't know if that's a factor, but just horrible to see these images for sure.
Yeah, Tim, we're meteorologists. A lot of us dabble in aviation, or we have some connection to aviation because, let's be honest, if you're a pilot, you've probably taken meteorology courses at some point, and if you're a meteorologist, you deal a lot with aviation because it's part of it. They just cross over quite a bit, and it's funny because so many of our colleagues, Tim, are pilots and meteorologists. So neither of us are pilots, but we deal a lot with some of these conditions, and we understand, like, flight rules at airports, the METARs, which we read all the time. We read kind of the same language that pilots do. But, the first thing we always think of, Tim, we're meteorologists, and we see a plane crash, we think, okay, could weather be a contributing factor? Because it is oftentimes a factor in these crashes. But I'll be honest with you, it wasn't great this morning, but it was a lot better at 10 a.m., 10:15 a.m. in Statesville than it was this afternoon and this evening when it got really bad. I could not find anything too crazy weather-wise. No strong winds, not a ton of turbulence, not a ton of icing. Probably the only thing that I looked at that maybe kind of just to peel back was the METAR had 5,000 foot overcast and had broken at 1,200. So it wasn't perfect visibility, Tim, but it was pretty good up to 5,000 feet, which is not bad even for a plane that didn't have instrumentation. But this was a big plane. This was not like your typical. I think people hear Cessna. That's the company name, not the type of plane. This was a Citation. This was basically a private jet, right? And it had all the equipment to fly in the clouds. So there's really nothing that jumps off the map to me, at least, that there was a ton of weather issues there. There was some drizzle. The visibility, I think, was like at times was about a 5 mile, and then it got worse as it went on. But at least initially, I don't think weather was a big factor. But we really won't know, Tim, until the NTSB fully investigates this.
Yeah, Brad, do you know the exact, I know they've mentioned it was in the 10 o'clock hour. What's interesting about the 10 o'clock hour, I've got this pulled up here. If you look at Statesville on the left, so this is about 10 o'clock on the nose. At 10 o'clock on the nose, the visibility was about 10. But if you go to 10:15, it's 5. And then if you go to 10:40, well, then it's down to 1.75 miles. So it is decreasing during that time. Now, planes take off and land in fog all the time, right? So I can't say that that's a factor. I don't know exactly what minute it happened. I don't remember. But there's been fog. There's been that cool air wedge that we talk about that's been creating some of that fog along with the drizzle. But otherwise, not a ton of really harsh crosswind or anything like that I noticed. So it's hard to say. And you had posted earlier, which I thought was really interesting, the flight path.
Yeah.
And again, not a pilot, not an aviation expert, don't claim to be. But if you're taking off and then you go around just very shortly and then immediately start to return to the airport, well, that might suggest to me that there's some sort of an issue with the aircraft, right? So that we don't know, but that could have been a factor.
Yeah, normally in weather situations, you're not turning around to go back to the airport, because if the weather was bad at the airport, that's probably the last place you want to go back to, right? So there clearly was something wrong with the plane, and they were trying to get the plane on the ground. So this is the flight path, just to tell everybody. So this is public data. All planes have, this ABS data. So I went back and I grabbed the flight path, and I'm going to try to pull this back a little bit. And so it took off. I'll try to do this so it's a little sensitive here. We'll pull this back, just try to fly it backwards here and show you what happened. So the plane took off, and I'm going to zoom in and kind of show you. It took off in this direction, took basically a left turn. It got some elevation here. So this is a 3D plot. This shows you how high off the ground it was. And then it immediately took a left turn. Now, what's interesting, some of the pilots I talked to, Tim, were kind of curious. So it was coming back to the airport. Clearly, they radioed in that they were having engine trouble. We don't know what that means. Was the engine out? Was it malfunctioning? Was it weak? We don't know. But if you look carefully, the airport is right here. They could have came in and just landed the opposite direction, right? If there was an emergency, they would have cleared the airfield. Could have landed. So some of the pilot friends I have had said, why didn't they just land right there? Why did they circle around at a much lower altitude, by the way, come in? And I know we've all seen the pictures. I don't want to show them again. They're kind of horrible. But even though you see that burning debris on the runway, the plane didn't actually make it to the runway. It landed short in this golf course. It actually took out some trees, a fence. There's a big scour in the ground here where it came up short. And then the debris, because of the forward momentum, ended up on the runway. And so what that tells you, and just this is the thing I do know about planes, and to create lift, you got to force air over the wings, right? So there's two ways to do that. With the engines going fast, or at higher altitudes, you can dip the nose and pick up speed through descent, and actually creates lift. And so if you don't have lift close to the ground, the only thing that's going to help you is an engine. And if you only have one engine, then that's where you run into some issues. So I guess the leading theory is they had some type of engine power issue. They clearly did not have enough lift to make it all the way to the runway. And we don't know if the engine was blown out. We don't know if it just was malfunctioning. And even I've heard, a bird strike is certainly in the realm of possibility, got ingested into one of the engines. But we talked to Chris Dunn, who's a colleague of ours. He's out at our Phoenix station.
All right, that was Brad and Tim explaining the weather situation. Brad showing us the flight pattern, where you got to see exactly what the NTSB officials described of it stopping short and hitting objects before it made it to the runway.
Right, and Brad was talking about some of the questions that they had last night. And so again, even though we just got that update less than an hour ago, within the last 40 minutes, a lot of those questions he said we still don't have answers to, just because it is so early on.
Yeah, absolutely. And that may come in the next 30 days. And when that preliminary report comes out, it might come out in 12 to 18 months. So we will be, of course, following this for as long as it takes, but they're still on scene investigating and will be for the foreseeable future. We're going to take another quick break, but more on this when we come back. Welcome back to Live Impact News. Just seconds away from 3:45, so we'll be here for the next 15 minutes. Wanted to give you another check of your forecast, though, with Larry Sprinkle before we go.
Good Friday afternoon. Not a cloud in the sky, considering this morning was rainy and heavy winds and even stormy in some spots. So really good at Monroe, looking great. Not a cloud in the sky there. A Lake Norman camera looking fantastic. A tower cam over in Dallas and uptown. Sunshine. Carolina blue skies. We did have rain that hit really basically this morning. Almost a half an inch rain reported up in the mountains. A little over 1/10 of an inch here in Charlotte. You can see a little over, I would say almost an inch there at Hickory, and over in places like Statesville, they topped out almost 1/3 of an inch of rainfall. So the rain is gone. It is out of here. And for today, as we head into the afternoon, temperatures in the mid to upper 50s. By around 6 o'clock this evening, sun going down. We're about 50 at that time. If you're out and about this evening, late this evening, around 11 o'clock, under clear skies, temperatures at that time will be in the upper 30s. Now, winds sustained in the daytime, but it's between about 10 and 20 miles per hour, but they'll calm down considerably if you're out and about as you head into the evening. Now, so for today, sunny skies. It'll be a windy day. Tomorrow will be, we'll say, comfortably cool, and Sunday afternoon, milder temperatures close to 60 degrees. Now, there will be some neighborhoods that actually make it into the mid-60s on Sunday afternoon. Check it out for your weekend. Looking okay, not too bad at all. At 58, sunshine with a morning low of 30 on Saturday, tomorrow, and Sunday morning we start about 37. 64 in the afternoon for a high temperature. Not expecting any precipitation anytime soon. In fact, dry weather continues, and this is 7 days. Not quite often that we don't include at least maybe an opportunity, but yeah, not a chance of rain at all the way as we head into next week, into Christmas week. So plans outside, we'll enjoy it. Speaking of outside, how about the forecast? Tampa Bay Bucks taking on the Carolina Panthers. Game time, 1 p.m. Bank of America Stadium. Kickoff temperatures should be in the mid-50s. We're going to look for winds pretty light, right around 5 to 7 miles per hour. And right in the middle of the game, we're at 60 degrees at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Pretty close to perfect weather on the sunny side. It's going to warm up. In fact, probably going to feel more like it's about 75, 80 degrees if you're right in the middle of the sunshine. But anyway, it's going to be a great afternoon for victory at the stadium. And check this out. Over the next 10 days, we have one day where the temperatures will be much cooler than average, and that just happens to be Monday at 51. But we see a major rebound in the temperatures. Now, we're not going to set any record high temperatures, but certainly well above the average as we get into next week. We have a couple days there late next week with high temperatures into the low 70s, almost spring-like with all those sunny skies out there. By the way, we did have an average of about 54 this time of the year. 34 is the average low. Record high 1984 on this day in history. We topped out at 76, and it could get pretty cold. The year was 1884. You got to go way back in the 1880s, 11 degrees on this day in history. Overnight tonight, we're looking for low temperatures around 27 at Boone, over around the Salisbury area in Rowan County, about 25, near 30 in the Charlotte metro area. Then looking into next week, where the lows go, we got the coldest days of next week, in the mornings at least, Monday and Tuesday in the low 30s. And check this out. Next Friday morning, that 52, that is the low temperature, getting close to the average high this time of the year. And once again, I mentioned spring-like temperatures. Check it out. Here's that Jerry Hunt 7-day forecast. Today we're in the upper 50s, more of the same tomorrow. There you go. Sunday afternoon at 64. We're at 51. That cool day on Monday, pretty close to average on Tuesday, then way above average. Christmas Eve daytime temperature in the upper 60s, more of the same on Christmas Day, so some warm weather headed that way. That's your forecast. Have a nice day and a great weekend. I'm Larry Sprinkle.
All right, we wanted to remind you one more time that after our Live Impact News wraps up today at 9 p.m., after our next newscast, we're also going to have some parades around the Piedmont. Who wouldn't love a little Christmas joy right now? I know you love Christmas, Carlene.
Of course.
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't?
So we're going to have the Fort Mill Christmas Parade tonight. We're going to have parades throughout the week, not the weekend, but throughout the week until Christmas Day. Except for Christmas Eve, we're going to have the NORAD Santa Tracker.
Which everybody loves. It's a fan favorite.
Oh, it's so fun to see where he's at.
Yeah.
And it shows like the number. actively going up so fast of how many presents he's delivered.
And you get to learn about the world, because you know what, we could all use a refresher on geography. Like, that's where Djibouti is, because I can't remember off the top of my head.
I forget sometimes.
Yeah.
And it shows little pictures of the places, so it like highlights different places. It's very fun.
It's very fun.
Yeah. So definitely tune in if you're looking for something festive. We're gonna have this tonight, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week. So something to look forward to. We're gonna take a quick break. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Welcome back. 3:51 here in the Live Impact studio. So just a few minutes left here. Of course, we've been talking all day about the big story, the death of Greg Biffle, his family, and 3 others on that fatal plane crash yesterday morning. But we are also trying to remember his legacy, not just as a NASCAR driver, but as a very generous person, both him and his wife, Christina, known for their philanthropy. We got a chance earlier to speak with someone who knew him quite well for many years, Mike Massaro, who covered NASCAR for a long time, now works for RFK Racing. So here's that conversation from just a bit ago where he remembered Greg Biffle and how he wants people to remember him as well. And we want to get back to this breaking news story of the death of Greg Biffle and his family, obviously leaving such a legacy behind him. And we're getting our first insight into how people are reacting, those who knew him, particularly in the NASCAR community. So we are very lucky today to be joined by Mike Massaro, who has been covering this sport for decades, now works for RFK Racing. And I know, Mike, this is a very personal loss for RFK Racing in particular. I just want to check in and offer our condolences first. How are you and the team doing with this news?
Well, thank you, Julie. We appreciate that. Under the circumstances, I guess we're doing pretty well, but it is devastating news. No question about it. Just not only for RFK Racing, but for the entire NASCAR community. If you're on social media, you cannot scroll without seeing a post from somebody who Greg touched. And it's not just in the sport, it's also outside the sport. His humanitarian efforts after Hurricane Helene, touched thousands of people and just really speaks to who Greg really was beyond a race car driver.
You have the unique experience of covering the sport for so long and then now being a part of the team. I know that Greg Biffle drove for Roush. I would be really curious to know any interactions that stick out to you, whether when he was driving or after the fact in his humanitarian work, any interactions that are sticking with you today that you had with him.
Well, they were always the same. I mean, Greg was super consistent. He was a driver who, from day one, as a young driver in the truck series, going back to 1998, to just recently when he was in his post-career, when he was just driving in fun events with, some thrill shows and things of that nature, he was always the same, very consistent. Ultra competitive, but he never let that take over his personality. He was always fun, always enjoyed what he was doing. You could tell that. He just was so enthusiastic about the sport. He just loved life. He loved being with people. He loved people in the community. He loved anything that involved motorsports of any kind. And he liked helping people, as I alluded to with his humanitarian efforts. I mean, he was always the same. There are so many drivers, Julie, who come into this sport as a young driver and are affected by the outside sources, whether it's the fame, whether it's the money, and they change. Greg never did. He remained grounded, and he will always be appreciated for that, I'm sure.
And Mike, I'm really glad you brought up Hurricane Helene. That was such a huge tragedy here in North Carolina, and Greg stepped up immediately. I remember we did stories with him going and delivering resources to those who needed it. I think that really speaks to, I know he's not from North Carolina, but how he made North Carolina and the community here his home.
Yeah, you're right. He's from Vancouver, Washington, but he lived in the Charlotte community for so long that it became a home for him, and he certainly had a connection to all the people here. So it certainly appeared that it touched his heart, what the folks in Western North Carolina were going through after the hurricane, and he put together what I consider, kind of a humanitarian air force, if you will. Not only did he make runs with his own helicopter up to the mountains to deliver supplies and things like that, but he also recruited other people who had their own private aircrafts who could also participate, and it just kind of snowballed from there. From what I recall, supplies were just pouring in. There were warehouses full of supplies that he was delivering up there, along with the collaboration he had with other people on their own helicopters. If it hadn't been for him, the suffering would have continued much longer. And I know there are a lot of people that are completely indebted to him and the folks surrounding his efforts during the hurricane relief efforts.
It's been so bittersweet to hear about all the people speaking out who were personally impacted by his generosity during that time. Now, I've also got Carlene here, who's a big NASCAR fan herself.
I am. My family has been a big fan for years and years, and I wanted to ask, I know Greg was just named one of, a couple years ago, 75 greatest drivers in the sport. And anything he got behind the wheel of, any car he drove, any truck he drove, anything he touched, he drove the heck out of it. So can you explain, what was the X factor behind his success? What's made him stood out from the field?
If I could pinpoint that and package it, I'm sure there's a lot of drivers who would like to know that secret too. It was such natural talent and his dedication to his craft. He would concentrate on, being in the simulator as a race car driver and doing so much work there, a lot of homework. But as you mentioned, Carlene, he could drive anything. He loved his dune buggy, right? So he liked going out and doing that kind of thing. Just this summer, he was involved in an exhibition race with one of our drivers, Ryan Preece, up in Connecticut at the Stafford Speedway with the Cletus McFarland Thrill Show, the New England 900. It was kind of more of an exhibition more than anything else.
All right, you were just listening in to our interview from earlier with Mike Mazzaro, remembering the legacy of Greg Biffle. Of course, we are still learning more information from the NTSB today about that crash and what led up to it, as well as what they still do not know. So we're going to let it go to our 4 p.m. newscast, where you're going to hear from reporters all across the scene. We've got them in Mooresville, where Greg Biffle lived with his family. We've got them in Statesville, where this crash happened and this update occurred. And we've also got our sports reporters in studio breaking down his legacy as well. So thank you for watching. Join us back here in the Live Impact studio at 6:30.